Chapter 341. However, Xiaoqing didn't boast that she didn't need others to go easy on her. She just smiled and said, "Okay." The man used his ability. His muscles immediately bulged. Was he a strength-type paranormal? Xiaoqing also released her own vines. She racked her brains to think of a way to go easy on him without making it seem like she was going easy on him. The vines wrapped around the man in an instant and tied him up tightly. Xiaoqing was stunned at first. Was the man so weak? Then she realized that something was wrong. The vines didn't pierce the man's skin. Secondly, the vines wrapped the man into a cocoon. But soon, the shape of the cocoon changed. It changed from a round shape to an indescribable shape. Then, Xiaoqing saw something soft like liquid flowing out from the cracks. After flowing out, the whole cocoon deflated. Then the liquid on the ground formed a human shape. Finally, it turned into the man's appearance. What kind of ability was this? Xiaoqing was stunned for a moment. This was the first time she had seen such a strange ability. She had to admit that if this ability was used well, it would definitely be very awesome. Turning one's body into liquid, there shouldn't be anyone who could kill him. Xiaoqing was curious. Then she changed her mind. She wanted to see what other abilities the man had. After all, it was the first time she had seen such an ability. Xiaoqing pressed her hand down. Countless vines rushed up to the sky. Each one was like a sharp spear, stabbing at the man. The man didn't know when a spear would come from under his feet. He also didn't know where it would come from. It was a test of one's reflexes. However, the man dodged 99% of the vines. The remaining 1% was too tricky. Sometimes, several vines would stab at him at the same time. It was impossible for him to dodge. Therefore, he had to choose the situation with the least injury. Every time this happened, the vines would turn into liquid. Therefore, 10 minutes passed. Xiaoqing didn't hurt the man, and the man couldn't get close to Xiaoqing. The onlookers were stunned. They had never seen anyone who could fight with a man like this. Even if the man went easy on her, he was already a level 4 fighter, while Xiaoqing was only at the peak of level 3. At least in their eyes, Xiaoqing was only at the pinnacle of level 3. Also, even if the man went easy on her, Xiaoqing didn't use her full strength. Didn't you see that she only used one kind of plant from beginning to end? A rank 3 would attribute metahuman should have at least 3 types of mutated plants for protection. Therefore, everyone looked at Xiaoqing as if they were looking up to a tall mountain. The man said expressionlessly, "You've passed the review. What's your name? You can go and claim your reward now." "My name is Xiaoqing," Xiaoqing said indifferently. The man nodded. "My name is Xiao Hansheng. We'll gather here at 7 o'clock tonight." After that, Xiaoqing left. She didn't claim her reward, but found a quiet place to sleep. She wanted to recover her energy and prepare to follow this group of people at night. When Xiaoqing arrived at the gathering place, she saw a few people standing there. Surprisingly, Xiaoqing was the only woman among them. The leader was naturally Xiao Hansheng. In front of this group of people, there was a man wearing glasses, who looked quite elegant. When Xiaoqing arrived, he coughed and said, "Is everyone here? I have a few words to tell you. First, this time you're going to risk your lives for this base. No matter what the result is, the base will protect your families as much as possible before it's destroyed. Second, the zombie king you're looking for is a woman. She likes to wear red lipstick and black dresses. She's holding the skeleton of a child." Tenderness flashed across the man's eyes, but in the blink of an eye, that tenderness turned into coldness. Her weakness is the skeleton of the child in her hands. You can attack the skeleton to distract her. Chapter 342. Xiaoqing couldn't help but frown. Who was this man? He seemed to know the Zombie King. Xiaoqing wasn't a resident of the base. She could leave at any time after completing her mission, so she asked straightforwardly, "You seem to know it." The elegant man was embarrassed for a moment, but soon he laughed and said, "How is that possible? I only saw it commanding zombies yesterday, and it has been protecting the corpse in its arms. So I guess its weakness is the corpse."
Oh.
Xiao Qing didn't believe him at all. Her intuition told her that the man was a little guilty. Probably because of his guilty conscience, the man encouraged them and let them leave. At that moment, Xiao Qing knew that the man was the base chief. She followed Zhao Hansheng and the others out slowly. When they reached the edge of the square, she turned around and saw the base chief squinting his eyes. There was an indescribable evil in his eyes. She didn't know what he was thinking. The base chief was also startled by her sudden turnaround. He awkwardly avoided Xiao Qing's eyes. When the group of people reached the gate of the base, many people came out to see them off, just like the warriors who had gone on an expedition in ancient times. Zhao Hansheng took out a bottle of spray and said, "Spray this on your body. It can confuse the zombie's sense of smell. It won't last long, but it's enough for us to find the zombie king and kill it." Then he took the lead and sprayed it on himself. When he sprayed it on his armpits first, then on his chest and back. A strong smell of corpse spread out. This stuff was mostly made by collecting the body fluids of zombies. It could temporarily block the smell of human bodies and confuse the zombie's sense of smell, making them think that they were the same kind. Xiao Qing didn't want to spray it because it smelled really bad. If she sprayed it on her body, she wouldn't be able to wash it off easily. Besides, the clothes she was wearing would definitely be ruined. It was like hurting the enemy 100 times, but losing 12,000 times. However, in order not to appear too abrupt, she still endured the stench and sprayed it. However, she didn't spray much. As a result, Zhao Hansheng sprayed Xiao Qing's chest all over. Women are so pretentious. Is a little smell more important than your life? Xiao Qing's face turned green at that time. Fortunately, it was already dark and she couldn't see clearly. Then, a group of people walked into the zombie crowd. To be honest, it was not a good experience to be in close contact with zombies, especially when there were so many of them. Once there was a flaw in the smell on their bodies, they would be swarmed by a group of zombies. Not to mention running back, it would be a good thing if they could even leave some bones behind. Even though they were prepared to die, they were still trembling with fear when they entered. There was a slightly younger youth whose legs were already trembling, looking especially pitiful. Xiao Qing couldn't help but ask him, "Since you're afraid, why did you come?" The youth whispered, "But I still have a sister. It doesn't matter if I die, but I have to fight for her." He puffed up his cheeks and said seriously, "I'm not afraid of death, but I'm afraid of pain." Xiao Qing couldn't help but touch his head, but Zhao Hansheng glared at her in return. He mouthed, "Don't talk. Be careful not to leak your smell." The youth was so scared that he hurriedly covered his mouth. His eyes rolled, looking at the zombies around him, and his face turned pale. Xiao Qing helplessly put her hands in her pockets, looking left and right. She didn't know whether it was good luck or bad luck, but she saw the woman standing in the zombie crowd at first glance. It stood quietly in the middle of the zombies, staring at them with a pair of eyes like black holes. It was still holding the skeleton in its arms. Xiao Qing was sure that it had found them. Chapter 343. At this time, Zhao Hansheng also found the woman. He whispered in surprise, "Follow me." Then, he took the lead to walk to the female zombie king. As soon as they approached, the zombie king suddenly looked up to the sky and roared. The sound waves spread quickly, making people unable to stand still. At this time, the zombie king made the first move. Like a cannonball, it rushed to the crowd with a murderous aura. Zhao Hansheng was the first one to stand still after Xiao Qing. He quickly stepped forward and blocked the zombie king's attack like a solid wall. However, the zombie king's attack was not something he could resist. Zhao Hansheng was knocked back quickly, and he took several steps back. At this time, the zombie king pounced on him again. The two superpowered people behind Zhao Hansheng took the lead to attack. At this time, the base chief and several people were standing on the wall with binoculars, looking at the vague figures, especially the skyrocketing light and the deafening sound. Someone beside him asked, "Base chief, what if they fail?" The base chief said with a cold face, "Once they fail, we'll apply the zombie scent simulation drug and leave through the secret passage." To put it bluntly, it meant giving up the base. As long as the people were still there, he would have a chance to make a comeback. Giving up the base was not a big deal. No matter how reluctant he was to give up the previous hard work, he would not lose his life. On Xiao Qing's side, the battle was in full swing. The suicide squad led by Zhao Hansheng was fighting with the Zombie King. Xiao Qing slowly opened her hands and pulled away two zombies who were trying to get close. At this time, Zhao Hansheng had collided with the Zombie King for the second time. He didn't know whether to say that he was thick-skinned or not, but he didn't suffer a big loss when he collided with the Zombie King head-on. He just needed to retreat a long distance every time to reduce the force. The other people were more pitiful. They were much weaker than Zhao Hansheng in terms of strength and superpowers. As soon as Zhao Hansheng was sent flying, the Zombie King clawed at the face of the other paranormal and crushed his skull. The Zombie King's strength was fierce. As soon as the smell of blood spread out, zombies naturally became restless and tried to get close. Although Xiao Qing wasn't going to help Zhao Hansheng and the others, she didn't want to hurt them either. She touched her chin and decided to create a chance for them to beat up the Zombie King. Those poor zombies were suppressed by Xiao Qing's vibe before they could even get close. After all, Xiao Qing was now a level 5 zombie, which was no weaker than the Zombie King. Therefore, the smell of blood filled the air, but not a single zombie came over. Those people were surprised and happy, and started to attack the Zombie King. Zhao Hansheng took almost all the damage. If he couldn't take it anymore, he would liquefy the part that was in contact with the Zombie King. For a while, the Zombie King couldn't do anything to them, but they couldn't do anything to the Zombie King either. Just as Xiao Qing was calmly watching the show, she suddenly heard a very vague voice. "Why are you helping them? We are the same kind." The voice was very vague. If you didn't listen carefully, you wouldn't be able to hear it clearly. Xiao Qing was stunned. Where did this voice come from? She glanced around and finally looked at the Zombie King in disbelief. Could it be God? Could it be that zombies have their own consciousness after reaching level 5? However, Xiao Qing quickly overturned her thoughts. That voice kept echoing in her mind, and it was all vague and reproachful. Chapter 344. Even if a broken recorder was playing it over and over again, and the sound was very vague, Xiao Qing was sure that it was not a sound, but a spiritual power. Just like how Xiao Tong could communicate with her through spiritual power, this should be a warning from the Zombie King using its spiritual power. Just as Xiao Qing was stunned, the Zombie King descended from the sky like a black bat and viciously tore apart a person's throat. That man was none other than the boy who had been talking to Xiao Qing at the beginning. He made a few strange sounds from his throat, then fell to the ground, and bright red liquid flowed out of his wounds. Xiao Qing lowered her head and looked at him. Her bright eyes slowly dimmed, filled with the desire to live. It was as if she was saying, "I don't want to die. I can't die. I still have a sister. If I die, who will protect her?" Xiao Qing seemed to hear his voice, with a little bit of timidity. "I'm not afraid of death. I'm afraid of pain." She moved her fingers, then couldn't help but reach out and pick up the boy, putting him behind her. She couldn't save him, and the only thing she could do was to keep his body from being damaged for the time being. Zhao Hansheng looked back at Xiao Qing, his eyes full of doubt and anger, as if he was saying, "Why don't you help us trap the Zombie King? Why are you doing nothing?" Xiao Qing didn't say anything, nor did she move. She just stood there, trying to communicate with the Zombie King with her weak spiritual power. Perhaps the Zombie King would tell her the truth. Xiao Qing gave a self-mocking smile. She clearly understood that everything she had done might be in vain. Sure enough, the Zombie King had been feeding her some feelings of anger, mixed with a little murderous intent. This time, it didn't even make a sound. Xiao Qing was a little disappointed. She narrowed her eyes and carefully observed the battle. Because of Zhao Hansheng, the battle didn't seem to be one-sided. However, Zhao Hansheng was only a level 4 superpower possessor, and this Zombie King was level 5. Even if Zhao Hansheng could temporarily resist the Zombie King's attack because of his special superpower, he couldn't hold on for too long. If they didn't have other trump cards, this group of people would definitely lose. Xiao Qing didn't know whether she should make a move or not, because once she did, the battle between her and the zombie king would ignite the whole zombie crowd. At that time, the whole zombie crowd would go crazy because of the battle between two kings. They would attack the living people nearby, and the nearest place to them was the base. That was to say, as long as Xiao Qing made a move, the zombie siege would be brought forward. She might temporarily save a few lives, but soon, more people would die, and they wouldn't be able to return to the city alive. They would still die at the hands of the crazy zombies. She was cold-blooded and heartless, but she wouldn't make a move for the time being. Xiao Qing's indifference surprised and angered everyone, but now wasn't the time to blame Xiao Qing. Every one of them was trying their best to attack the zombie king. However, the gap between them and the zombie king was too big. Even if they risked their lives to attack, they couldn't even reach the zombie king's skirt. Although they didn't know why the zombies nearby didn't attack them, they couldn't rely on luck. They had to finish the battle as soon as possible. Otherwise, it would be their base that would be destroyed. One of the men suddenly gritted his teeth and roared with red eyes, "If you have a chance to go back alive, take care of my wife for me." Then he pounced on the zombie king. His speed was very fast, and the zombie king was in a stalemate with Zhao Hanqing, so Zhao Hanqing didn't pay attention and was pounced on by him. As soon as he pounced on the zombie king, he used his hands and feet to lock the zombie king. Then, many vines drilled out of his body and entangled him and the zombie king. He was also a wood-powered superpower possessor. After trapping the zombie king, the wood-powered man's body suddenly swelled like a balloon. Soon, he swelled up as if he had been injected with dozens of kilograms of water. Then, he exploded into a mass of flesh and blood. This was a very special ability, which came from the spores of a kind of plant. It could be said to be his innate ability. In the past, this superpower possessor used to joke with his friends, saying that such an ability was useless. It could only be used to perish together with others, and he would never use it in his life. But now he used it. The blood mist spread and slowly dissipated. A shrill howl was heard. Except for the zombie king's messy hair, there was no wound at all. However, the child skeleton in her arms fell apart because of the violent explosion. The fragile skeleton scattered all over the ground. The zombie king knelt on the ground in a panic, picked up the bones one by one, and put them into her arms. At this time, she didn't look like a zombie king that had caused countless uproars and launched a zombie siege. She looked more like a helpless mother. Zhao Hanqing's eyes were also red, but he knew that this was his only chance, the only chance to hurt or even kill this zombie king, and this chance was created by his companion's life. He absolutely couldn't miss it. In an instant, several superpower possessors used their strongest moves. Colorful superpowers instantly engulfed the zombie king kneeling on the ground. What Xiao Qing could see was the zombie king's last movement. In an instant, it curled up its body, protected all the scattered bones in its arms, and welcomed the superpowers with its own back. With a loud bang, Xiao Qing even felt the ground under her feet shake a few times. Especially the place where everyone was focusing their fire, it directly turned into a huge pit. As the smoke and dust dispersed, the thing in the pit was slowly revealed. First, there was a piece of flesh that had lost its skin, leaving only the spine and the internal organs that could be seen through the spine. Those internal organs had turned black and smelled bad, without any vitality at all. Then it slowly straightened its back. The zombie king didn't die. Even if it only lost the skin on its back, given enough time, it could recover. This injury was not serious, but it had already gone completely crazy. That was because although the skeletons in its bosom were well protected, they were, after all, the skeletons of ordinary children. They could not withstand the shock, and some of them had already shattered into powder. In everyone's horrified and unbelievable eyes, the zombie king slowly stood up and inserted the rest of the bones, one by one, into her stomach. The last skull, because it was too big and blunt, couldn't be inserted, so she tore open her chest and stuffed it in alive. Obviously, this scene was very scary, but Xiao Qing saw a touch of gentleness in the zombie king's eyes. A mother, even if she had become a zombie, still couldn't restrain her love for her children. This was really great. Chapter 345. It was worried that it wouldn't be able to protect those bones, so it would rather put them into its body and integrate them with itself. That way, unless it died, its children wouldn't be harmed. After all the bones were stuffed into its body, the zombie king's blood-red eyes looked at everyone present. This was the post-apocalyptic era, the cruelest era. People had their own protection, and zombies had their own obsession. It was hard to tell who was right and who was wrong. Xiao Qing was actually a little tangled. She could see that Zhao Hansheng was a good person. It would be a pity if he died, but she couldn't save him. She could only watch the zombie king run amok in the crowd. After the zombie king went crazy, Zhao Hansheng acted like he was on drugs, crazily standing in the front. Whenever the zombie king tried to attack his teammates, Zhao Hansheng would use crazy attacks to draw the zombie king away, or directly become a human shield to protect his teammates. In a short time, no one was killed by the zombie king, but Zhao Hansheng himself was scarred. Even if he could liquefy his body, it couldn't be used all the time, and when he was in the liquefied state, he couldn't bear any damage. Sometimes, in order to protect his teammates, Zhao Hansheng had to use his own body as a shield. Those paranormals also gritted their teeth and desperately attacked the zombie king to relieve the pressure on Zhao Hansheng. The two sides were in a temporary stalemate. It was already 9:00 in the evening. Xiao Qing looked at the time. If it went on like this, Zhao Hansheng would definitely be defeated. Just when those paranormals were all scarred and about to lose, suddenly, a particularly sharp howl sounded from the north. The zombie king, who was about to kill Zhao Hansheng and others, decisively stopped and roared in response to the howl. Then, it didn't continue to fight and got into the crowd, heading north. As soon as Zhao Hansheng got out of the battle, he lay on the ground as if all his strength had been sucked out. He couldn't help but feel a little desperate. Was the zombie king going to launch a general attack? Xiao Qing rolled up her sleeves as she walked past him. She threw some ointment on him to stop the bleeding. It was just right for now when they were all injured all over. Zhao Hansheng can't help grabbing Xiao Qing's trousers. Xiao Qing lowers her head and looks at him in confusion. Zhao Hansheng's eyes are full of anger. Why didn't you participate in the battle against the zombie king? Why didn't you save those who had died? You clearly had the ability to do so. You were clearly a member of the team. Xiao Qing knew Zhao Hansheng's doubts, but she didn't want to explain. She didn't want to tell Zhao Hansheng and the others that she was a zombie king, and that once she started a fight with the zombie king, she would trigger the zombie siege in advance. Could it be that I did not help you? I chased away those zombies that tried to approach and created a relatively advantageous situation for you? So, she didn't want to explain from the beginning to the end. Anyway, after this matter is solved, she will leave. She probably won't have many chances to meet Zhao Hansheng and the others in her life. If they're misunderstood, then so be it. Anyway, she and Zhao Hansheng are not familiar with each other. So, what if they are misunderstood? Xiao Qing slightly raises her foot, then pulls her trousers out of Zhao Hansheng's hands. Then, she chases after the zombie king. Wherever she passes, those zombies will obediently make way for her. Zhao Hansheng closes his eyes. He can't tell if he is in despair or something else. He knows that he and his companions can't go back. They are surrounded by zombies, and they are covered in wounds. That thing can't cover the smell of blood. Once the zombie king leaves, the surrounding zombies will tear them to pieces. Chapter 346. It was a dead end. Zhao Hansheng closed his eyes and waited for death for a long time, but the pain didn't come. He opened his eyes and found a group of zombies walking past him. Every one of them looked at him like a foodie looking at a freshly baked Beijing duck, but they didn't have the money to eat it. Therefore, the group of zombies walked past him with an expression that said this human must be delicious. They didn't even look at him and walked away without looking back. Although they didn't know what had happened, one thing was certain. They were lucky to survive. Although Zhao Hansheng was still worried that he would be torn to pieces as soon as he moved, Thinking that the zombies were moving towards the base, he couldn't help but get up. Zhao Hanqing tentatively took 2 steps forward. Those zombies still didn't touch him. Only then did he feel relieved. He said to his friends, "You guys find a place to hide first." Then he hurriedly followed the zombie king. The other people were also seriously injured. They all knew that once the zombies started to attack the base, the gate of the base wouldn't open, so they definitely couldn't return to the base. So they could only find a place to hide first. Before they left, they carried their dead companions on their backs, which made the surrounding zombies so angry that they wanted to scratch the wall. Xiao Qing went all the way forward, following the zombie king from a distance. Then she saw the zombie king and several strange-looking zombies, who looked like monkeys that had been made into specimens and then came back to life. There was even a mutant dog in the middle. Then the mutant dog led the zombie king, and the zombie king led his subordinates in a direction to outflank. Finally, after stopping at a mound, all the zombies quieted down, and under the zombie king's command, they ambushed nearby. After a while, the ground suddenly moved, and a black hole opened up. A wretched-looking man stuck his head out and looked around. Then, he jumped out and shouted into the hole, "It's safe. Come out." Then, many people came out of the tunnel, including the bespectacled base chief. Base chief said while crawling out, "Fortunately, we didn't do anything. Otherwise, we would have died in the city. Now, let's go." Before he finished talking, he saw the zombie king standing behind the mound. He was so scared that he took a step back and almost fell to the ground. "Base chief, what's wrong?" The perverted man hadn't found the zombie king yet. He thought that the base chief was worried about losing his base, so he said, "Although this base is gone, we can find another place to start again. We can still build another base." The base chief could no longer hear him. He just stared straight at the zombie king. It was hard to tell what kind of complicated emotions were in his eyes. After a long time, he slowly stepped back. At the same time, he looked around, looking for a way to escape. The zombie king screamed, and all the zombies that were lying in ambush ran out and surrounded the group of people. The base chief's smile was a little ugly. He looked left and right and knew he was in a hopeless situation. He lowered his voice and said affectionately, "Xian, are you here for me?" The zombie king stared at him. Its eyes became redder and redder, as if blood was about to drip out. Its aura also became more and more dignified and terrifying. Only Xiao Qing saw it clearly. At that moment, the zombie king broke through to the middle stage of level 5. It was a little stronger than Xiao Qing now. The base chief was really scared. His legs were weak, let alone the people who followed him. The zombie king walked over step by step until it was in front of the base chief. It raised its hand, and its sharp fingernails were like sharp blades, shining with a cold light. Chapter 347. The base chief suddenly said, "Xian, do you still remember? I gave you the ring. I was poor back then. I couldn't afford gold or silver, so I used coins. I hollowed out the center of the ring and made it look like a ring. I gave it to you. At that time, you said it was the most beautiful ring in the world." For a moment, the zombie king was at a loss. It didn't have many memories, only a deep obsession and an inexplicable hatred. The base chief continued, "At that time, everyone looked down on me. You were the only one who didn't hesitate to marry me. Our wedding was very simple. We didn't have a wedding dress, a banquet, or your favorite red rose. I cut a Chinese rose and put it in your hair. Only you and I held hands and got a marriage certificate." His eyes glistened with tears, full of affection. "Do you still remember me? Do you still remember me?" Just as the zombie king was in a state of confusion, the base chief suddenly rushed over. It looked like he wanted to hug the zombie king, but he was actually holding a dagger in his hand. He stabbed it hard into the zombie king's chest. The skeleton of a child was still in its chest. The zombie king, whose reverse scale had been touched, suddenly went crazy. It slapped the base chief and sent him flying. The base chief was slapped to the ground. As soon as he landed, he spat out a mouthful of blood. Then, without stopping, He turned around and rushed toward the zombies that surrounded him. He was very fast. There was a faint green light around his ankle. It turned out that he was also a superpower possessor and a wind power possessor. The zombie king roared and was about to chase after him, but the base chief, who was running fast, was kicked back. Xiao Qing chuckled. She looked at the base chief rolling on the ground like a gourd. Then she said, "Since you love it so much, why do you still want to leave? Why don't you two catch up?" The base chief was kicked in the chest. For a moment, he couldn't breathe. He looked at Xiao Qing in surprise, as if he couldn't understand why Xiao Qing did that. Xiao Qing rolled up her sleeves and continued watching the scene. She was now sure that the base chief and the zombie king knew each other. Not only that, they were probably husband and wife. Then, why did they turn against each other? Why did the zombie king turn into a zombie? Why did both of them want to kill the base chief so badly? Xiao Qing felt that there must be a lot of secrets in this, and she really wanted to know. The zombie king looked at Xiao Qing gratefully. It squatted down and grabbed the base chief's neck, wanting to strangle him. The base chief grabbed the zombie king's wrist with one hand and condensed a wind blade with the other to stab the zombie king's eyes. When the zombie king turned its head to dodge, the base chief struggled to escape from the zombie king's grasp. He rolled back and dodged temporarily. All of this happened in the blink of an eye. Those who came out with the base chief were stunned. What was going on? He didn't know that Xiao Qing was also very curious. First, she was sure that this base chief wasn't a good person. Would a good base chief abandon the entire base and escape through a secret passage when the base's survival was at stake? Second, he could say affectionate words to a zombie while attacking it. How could an ordinary person do that? Most importantly, what was the identity of the zombie king? Why was it carrying the skeleton of a child to seek revenge from the base chief? Xiao Qing was really curious. She bit her nails and watched the base chief and his people run away like rats while being chased by zombies. It was like watching a show. Until Zhao Hansheng came. Zhao Hansheng saw the base chief being chased by zombies and hurried to protect him. Xiao Qing had a headache. Why did this person come again? Chapter 348. He was already injured. Shouldn't he find a place to heal? Why did he come back to seek death? If Zhao Hansheng was killed in order to save this bastard who had abandoned the entire base, it wouldn't be worth it at all. Xiao Qing calmly reached out her hand. Immediately, vines came out from under Zhao Hansheng's feet. He wasn't as strong as Xiao Qing, and he was seriously injured. He couldn't dodge at all. Soon, he was entangled and dragged to Xiao Qing. "You, let me go." Zhao Hansheng glared at Xiao Qing, gritted his teeth and said, You? He didn't know how to curse. After a long while, he squeezed out a word, "Scum." Xiao Qing sneered, then slapped him on the head. "Is your brain full of water? Why don't you think about it? Why is your great base chief here? Is this kind of person worth risking your life to protect?" Zhao Hansheng was only a little straightened, but he wasn't stupid. He quickly reacted and didn't say anything for a long time. Xiao Qing hung him to the side and continued to watch the show. The zombie king approached the base chief step by step. When it was in front of the base chief, it waved its claws at him. The base chief immediately dragged a person over and used him as a shield. That man didn't even have the chance to say a word before his head was smashed by the zombie king. As soon as this man died, the base chief used the corpse as a cover to escape again. Then, in order to get out of trouble, he pushed a man next to him into the zombie crowd and watched the man being eaten by the zombies. Zhao Hansheng was stunned. He knew clearly that if Xiao Qing hadn't pulled him over, he would have been the one being used as a human shield. Was this the kind of person he had been loyal to and protecting all this time? A base chief who abandoned the whole base and ran away. A base chief who used his companions as a shield. A base chief who pushed his own men into the zombie crowd. Xiao Qing handed some biscuits to Zhao Hansheng. "Do you want some to calm down?" Zhao Hansheng immediately looked at her with a strange expression. In Zhao Hansheng's eyes, Xiao Qing was now a big weirdo. The bloody scene in front of her was enough to make people lose their appetite, but She was still eating biscuits. Xiao Qing stuffed the biscuit into her mouth and continued to watch the show. She firmly believed that the best part was yet to come. Xiao Qing was surrounded by vines, baring their fangs and brandishing their claws. Any zombie that accidentally got close to her would be whipped away. The base chief had been badly injured by the zombie king. As soon as he saw Xiao Qing, he couldn't help but want to divert the trouble away. This was probably the worst decision he had made tonight. He suddenly jumped up and rushed towards Xiao Qing, but before he could say or do anything, the vines came down on him and beat him up until his head was swollen like a pig's. Then, he almost couldn't dodge the zombie king's attack and was beheaded. Xiao Qing smiled and said, "You want to drag me down with you? I'll give you a chance. Tell me the gossip about you and the zombie king. If I'm happy, maybe I'll save you. If I'm willing to protect you, no one here can kill you." He hesitated, but another man said without hesitation, "I'm his childhood friend. I know everything about him. If you save me, I'll tell you." Xiao Qing leisurely reached out a vine and dragged him over, then hung him up. "You can tell me now. If you lie to me, I'll throw you into the zombie crowd." The man swallowed, then glanced at the base chief. He straightened his neck and said, "He's an animal. He has a human face and a beast heart. He deserves it." Hearing that, Xiao Qing was shocked. Hey, wasn't this man his childhood friend? What a sharp comment. Chapter 349. That female zombie is his wife, Yang Su-yun. She followed him when he was still a poor loser and supported him very much. She took out all her savings and salary for him to start his business. In the end, this heartless and unscrupulous person actually took the money out to gamble and even had mistresses. Once he ran out of money, he would come back to ask Yang Su-yun for money. Yang Su-yun did not know what he was doing outside and gave him all her money. She ate steamed buns and salted vegetables every day until Yang Su-yun got pregnant. That guy finally restrained himself a little. That person took a deep breath and began to curse. A dog can't stop itself from eating shit. A few days later, he went out to cheat again. God did not have eyes. He actually did not let Yang Su-yun discover that he was such a beast. Later on, when the child was a little more than 1 year old, the world ended. Didn't the television say that many people fell into a coma, and after waking up, they would turn into zombies and bite people everywhere? This beast actually threw his son down from the 6th floor. Because his son was unconscious at that time, he was worried that his son would turn into a zombie, so he threw his son down. A 1-year-old child falling from the 6th floor, other than falling to his death, is there any other way? Other than a beast, who else would do such a thing? Even a vicious tiger would not eat its cubs. The base chief's face turned red and white. He roared angrily, "Shut up." That person rolled his eyes sarcastically, then continued, "There's something even more ruthless." Yang Su-yun almost went crazy at that time. She tried to go downstairs to find her son, then she was beaten up by this beast. He locked her up and did not let her out until there was no more food in the house. Heh, guess what he did? His voice echoed in the open space. Everyone pricked up their ears. That person sneered and continued. He actually wanted to kill Yang Su-yun and eat her flesh. He even regretted throwing his son down instead of killing him and putting him in the refrigerator. This is what he told me personally. Yang Su-yun jumped down from the 6th floor in a fit of madness. She was probably bitten by a zombie, so she came back to take revenge. Tui, I think he deserved it. When this person said those words, not to mention Xiao Qing, even people who were with the base chief could not help but stay away from him. Killing one's son and eating one's wife, how crazy was this person to do such a thing? Zhao Hansheng was an honest person. He struggled and said, "Let me go. I want to kill him." Xiao Qing could not help but slap him. She sneered, "You just risked your life to protect him, and now you want to kill him? You'd better squat here obediently." After slapping Zhao Hansheng, Xiao Qing patted the man who spoke. She smiled and said, "Very good, very cooperative. You are safe now." Then the vine carried him all the way out of the zombie encirclement. She finally threw him aside. That person was stunned at first. Then he was pleasantly surprised. He thanked her repeatedly, then spat at the base chief's position. He then walked in the direction of the base. After sending that person away, Shao Qing said to the Zombie King, "I will not stop you from taking revenge, but after taking your revenge, leave this place. Those people in the base are innocent after all." The Zombie King already had some consciousness. It let out a low howl in response to Shao Qing, then looked at the base chief. The base chief still wanted to run, but his legs were bound by Shao Qing's vines. After being bound, he did not even have the chance to run. He could only watch helplessly as the Zombie King walked over and grabbed his neck. Its face was filled with deep hatred. He struggled for a while, and a cracking sound came from his throat. Soon, his eyes were about to fall out of their sockets. This was because a hand had pierced into his chest, probing and stirring inside before finally grabbing onto a piece of flesh that was still pulsating. That was his heart. Chapter 350. Perhaps it had once questioned whether his heart was black or not. It had also once thought of swallowing him alive. But in the end, the Zombie King only crushed the beating heart into mincemeat. He threw the corpse that had lost its heart into the zombie crowd and let the zombies eat it. The Zombie King covered its chest and watched silently. Only when the corpse was left with only bones and bits of flesh on the bones did it let out a roar. Those zombies who had received the order retreated like the tide, scattering until they could no longer be seen. Only the Zombie King was left in a daze. At the moment when it got its revenge, it didn't feel happy or sad, only confused. It suddenly recalled some scenes in its mind. It fell from a tall building. It didn't know if it was lucky or unlucky. It fell into a flower bed and broke its leg. It couldn't tell where it was, and then it was bitten by a zombie. After it became a zombie, it wandered around with many zombies, eating people, and its own kind. In the end, it became the top group of its kind. It seemed to have remembered something and returned to the first floor where it fell. From the layers of bones, it picked up a skeleton that had been eaten clean, leaving only the bones. When it was windy and rainy, it would hide in some abandoned houses with the skeleton. When it was in a fight, it would carefully protect the skeleton. Even if it was injured, it wouldn't let the skeleton be damaged. For this reason, it was seriously injured several times. Because of this, it learned to hide in the dark and wait for both sides to be injured. Then it would go out and pick up the ready-made ones. It remembered that it had enemies, people that it hated to the core. But now, its enemies were dead. They died without an intact body.
It didn't know what to do next.
Nowhere to go. Shao Qing lifted the Zombie King's chin and carefully observed its neck. It was badly rotten. It should be the wound where the zombie first bit it. The Zombie King was highly vigilant towards its own kind, but it was grateful to Shao Qing. It looked at Shao Qing confusedly. Shao Qing said to it seriously, "Go south. There is a place called Jiang City. My friends are all there. It's a good place to settle down. If you don't have a place to go, you can go to Jiang City." The Zombie King roared gratefully, then took his monkey-like brothers and left with the other zombies. Zhao Hansheng was still hanging there. He was a little confused. The zombie siege that troubled them was solved just like that? Just a second ago, he was still holding on to the hope that even if he were to die, he would die before the base was breached. But in the next second, all the zombies retreated. It was like a dream. He couldn't even tell whether it was a dream when the zombies surrounded the city, or now that the zombies had dispersed, it was a dream. Shao Qing retracted the vines and said to Zhao Hansheng and the others, "The crisis is over. You can return to the city. The only problem is that we need to choose a new chief." The remaining group of people expressed that even if the original base chief was still alive, they would not let such a beast in human skin be the base chief again. It was time to select a new base chief. All eyes were on Zhao Hansheng. Zhao Hansheng was still confused. He stared at Shao Qing's back as she left. His heart was filled with indescribable disappointment and a feeling that he couldn't explain. She was a very magical girl. He had never seen such a woman. She was strong, mysterious, independent, and independent. Even her beauty was beautiful and sharp. He probably wouldn't see her again. Zhao Hanqing rubbed his chest. That strange feeling lingered in his heart and refused to go away. Chapter 351. On the other side, Xiao Qing had met up with her friends. Qin Zishi had big dark circles under his eyes. It was obvious that he hadn't slept well. It was only when Xiao Qing came back that he heaved a sigh of relief and looked at Xiao Qing with a very bitter expression. Xiao Qing hurriedly explained the general situation to everyone, causing a few of her companions to be very angry. At the end of the world, when the law no longer played its role, the demons that had been suppressed in the hearts of some people for a long time were released. When the shackles of morality and the shackles of the law were no longer effective, some people would become unscrupulous, disregarding the law, and becoming deranged. Since the problem was solved, they had to go back as soon as possible. Otherwise, Gu Ning and Gu Ning might arrive with reinforcements on their way back. Therefore, Qin Zishi asked his friends to find a pack of mutant wolves. He rode on a mutant wolf and rushed back. When they arrived at the gate of the capital, Qin Zishi had just released the pack of mutant wolves when he saw his father walking out with reinforcements. If they had come a little later, they might have missed each other. It was too much of a coincidence. His father was struck dumb when he saw them coming back. He asked, "What happened? Is the battle over? Is the base broken? Why did you come back?" Qin Zishi had no choice but to repeat what Xiao Qing had said yesterday. She then said, "We were worried that the reinforcements would leave too quickly and that I would be too slow to return. It would be easy to meet the reinforcements on the way back, and the reinforcements would have made a wasted trip, so we sped up our return." His father didn't know that the siege of the city was over until now. At this moment, he looked at Xiao Qing in a different way. No matter what, Xiao Qing was brave and resourceful, since she dared to investigate alone and succeeded. "Since it's done, you can come back now," his father said calmly. Father Qin said calmly. This was the first task he had given Qin Zishi, and it was beyond his expectations that she would complete it so well. Mr. Qin actually wanted to praise Qin Zishi, but firstly, he was too shy to say it out loud. Secondly, he was not familiar with the business and was a little stuck. Thirdly, he was afraid that Qin Zishi would be proud. Hence, Mr. Qin cleared his throat for a long time and finally said, "Go back and rest." The journey was quite tiring. Qin Zishi responded expressionlessly and led her friends inside. Xiao Qing could tell that Mr. Qin cared a lot about Qin Zishi. Otherwise, he wouldn't have rushed out with his friends the moment he received news that the Gu siblings were back. A general who came from a military family had his collar button crooked when he led his troops out. How impatient was he? This pair of father and son clearly cared about each other and cared a lot about each other, but they refused to say anything. They would rather have a cold war than express their inner thoughts. Xiao Qing felt tired for them. After entering the capital, they relaxed. Although there was only one adventure, the others who waited outside didn't have an easy time either. Everyone was so worried that they couldn't sleep well at all. Once they were back in the capital, they felt safe and relaxed. However, the moment they arrived at the gate of the Qin family's house, they saw Master Qin walking out with several people in a panic. Seeing Xiao Qing, Master Qin couldn't control himself and immediately said, "The baby is missing." Master Qin had been looking after the little bun these days. He usually took the little bun to play. Occasionally, when the little bun ran to the gate to play by himself, there must be people secretly protecting him. Therefore, Master Qin was quite relieved. Chapter 352. But today, Little Bun said he wanted to play with a ball at the door. Grandpa Qin was busy dealing with the strange fog Xiao Qing had given them, so he arranged for a few superpowered people to secretly protect Little Bun. But at lunchtime, Grandpa Qin realized that Little Bun hadn't come back. He went to the door to call him personally, but then he realized that Little Bun was gone. He was shocked. He couldn't get in touch with Little Bun's bodyguards, so he hurriedly ordered the nannies and bodyguards to search everywhere. In the end, he found the bodies of several bodyguards in a corner. The wounds on the bodies were clean. It was obvious that they had been killed with one stab. He couldn't tell what kind of superpowered person had done it. Grandpa Qin's hands and feet turned cold, and he almost fainted. He really doted on Little Bun like he was his grandson. Now that Little Bun had suddenly disappeared and his bodyguards were dead, even though he was used to seeing countless storms and waves and had been able to hold his own in the political world for a long time, he was now an ordinary old man in a panic. Just as Grandpa Qin organized his men to search for Little Bun, Xiaoqing finally came back. As soon as Xiaoqing heard that the Little Bun was missing, her vision went dark. She had originally thought that the capital was safer, so she had left the Little Bun behind. In the end, the Little Bun had disappeared within a few days. Her heart, which hadn't beat since she came back from the dead, seemed to be trembling at this moment. She grabbed the arm of the person beside her tightly and lowered her voice, trying to make it sound less shaky. Go and find him. Even if you have to turn the entire capital upside down, you have to find my son. Yan Qiue was in pain from Xiaoqing's grip, but she still comforted Xiaoqing softly. It'll be fine. Jingdu is only so big, so it's easy to find him. Those people must have caught Little Bun to target you, so they won't easily hurt him. Plus, Little Bun is not completely defenseless. Don't worry. Xiaoqing couldn't hear a word of comfort. Her mind was filled with searching. Grandpa Qin and Father Qin hurriedly gave the order and mobilized all their men. As she looked around, a person suddenly flashed across Xiaoqing's mind. Lin Qifan. For the past few days, Lin Qifan must have come to look for Little Bun frequently. Before he disappeared, Little Bun said that he wanted to play ball with someone at the door. It was very likely that this person was Lin Qifan, the person who kidnapped Little Bun. Xiaoqing told her friends about this conjecture, and they split into several groups. Each group brought along a person who was familiar with Jingdu, and then they split up to look for the women related to Lin Qifan. If she found Lin Qifan, she might be able to find the Little Bun. Xiaoqing, Yan Qiue, and Dai were in a group. They brought along a person who was familiar with Jingdu and went to find Lu Xian. When they came to Jingdu this time, they saw Lu Xian and Lin Qifan together. She was jealous of Lin Qifan and almost killed a pair of siblings. She should know where Lin Qifan is, right? At this moment, Lu Xian was having fun with her group of bad friends. Xiaoqing kicked open the door, giving her a fright. When she saw that it was Xiaoqing, she was shocked again. But this time, Qin Zishi wasn't there, so she breathed a sigh of relief. Without seeing Qin Zishi, Lu Xian became much bolder. In addition, she had many friends to support her. She immediately slammed the table and said, "What do you want? This is my house. You're trespassing. Even if I beat you to death here, it's self-defense. Do you understand?" How could Xiaoqing have the time to listen to her blabbering? She immediately pulled out her military knife and nailed it to the table. "I'll ask you 2 questions. Answer me truthfully or I'll gouge your eyes out." Chapter 353. Xiaoqing's voice was flat, as if it wasn't threatening at all. However, Lu Xian shuddered. But then, she felt that being threatened by Xiaoqing in front of all her friends was very embarrassing. She straightened her neck and said, "I'll say whatever you want me to say. Who do you think you are?" In fact, her words were already showing her weakness. However, Xiaoqing wasn't in the mood to talk to her. She held the military knife and directly stabbed it into the back of Lu Xian's hand, nailing her hand to the table. Lu Xian screamed in pain. Her friends wanted to help, but Xiaoqing whipped them into rolling gourds on the floor. "I'm not in the mood to talk nonsense with you. I'll give you 2 choices. First, tell me where Lin Qifan lives and where he is now. Second, let me kill you." Lu Xian was in so much pain that she kept sucking in cold air. However, she knew that Xiaoqing wasn't lying. If she really refused again, Xiaoqing would really dare to dig her eyes out and step on them like a light bulb. Lu Xian hurriedly said, "Lin Qifan lives in the west of the city. He has a small villa. The address is..." After she told her the address, Xiaoqing calmly pulled out the military knife. She didn't even wipe the blood off and hurriedly led her people to the place she told her. Luxian still liked Lin Qifan. As soon as Xiaoqing left, she tried to call Lin Qifan, but it didn't go through. On the other side, Xiaoqing had already arrived at Lin Qifan's place. She violently broke the door. The three of them searched the entire villa, but they didn't see Lin Qifan. Her face couldn't help but become gloomy, and she became more and more anxious. Yan Qiyu hurriedly comforted her. Let's go back to the Qin family first. What if there's news? What if they've already found him? Although she knew that the chances were slim, Xiaoqing still nodded and walked back. Dai didn't know how to speak, so she pulled on Yan Qiyue's sleeve and asked her to comfort Xiaoqing. Yan Qiyue said, "Ah, Qing, you have to think positively. No matter what the person who took the baby away was thinking, he wouldn't hurt the baby. He definitely wanted to use the baby to exchange for something from us. Plus, the baby has a superpower. He's young, so he won't be guarded. With Yaya's protection, nothing bad will happen to him."
Yaya.
Xiaoqing's eyes brightened. She hurriedly sped up. "Let's go." The two people were confused, but they still hurriedly followed Xiaoqing. Xiaoqing's heart was filled with joy. How could she forget Ya? Yaya's intelligence wasn't inferior to the average person's. Since she hadn't found Yaya at the scene of the little bun's disappearance, it meant that Yaya was most likely with the little bun. When they returned, there was still no news of the little bun. Xiaoqing walked around the last spot where the little bun was last seen before he disappeared. Her efforts paid off. She finally found something. It was a tuft of rabbit fur. This tuft of rabbit fur was in the place where the little bun often played with a ball. Those who didn't know better would think that Yaya had dropped it when she was picking up a ball. The rabbit fur was facing west. Xiaoqing immediately said, "This is most likely left by Yaya. Let's go." They walked all the way to the west. After walking for a long time, they indeed saw another tuft of rabbit fur in a corner. The rabbit fur was facing west. This time, they could confirm that Yaya had deliberately left it behind. Xiaoqing followed the markings left by Yaya. The little bun was in a daze. He was locked up in a small dark room with only Yaya in his arms to keep him company. After his captors left, the little bun secretly got up from the ground. He stood on his tiptoes and tried to look out the window. However, the window was too high and he couldn't reach it. Chapter 354. Little Bun was a little discouraged. He lowered his head and played with Yaya in his arms, saying in a low voice, "When will Mama come back? Mama will be very worried when she finds out that I'm gone. Yaya, shrink back. When will Mama come and save us?" After nagging for a while, the little bun sighed and began to play with Yaya. Yaya's face was swollen, and it could not help but roll its eyes. It had left evidence for Xiaoqing, so it had to bear the pain of plucking its fur. If Xiaoqing did not find the evidence it left behind, things would be bad. If Xiaoqing found it, she would definitely be able to find them. Yaya gritted its teeth and thought that it had contributed a lot of hair this time. When it plucked the hair, it was very distressed. When Xiaoqing found them, it must ask Xiaoqing for a lot of carrots to make up for the hair it had plucked. After Little Bun was captured, he was locked in a small dark room. There seemed to be people who had captured him. Little Bun was very smart. He did not want to sit there and wait for death, so he began to look around. The small dark room was empty. There was nothing, not even a light. There was only a door and a window. He jumped and looked outside through the window. He saw a lot of metal and other things piled up outside. Some of them were rusty. Little Bun jumped and jumped, taking in everything outside. It seemed to be a very old factory, and there were many rusty steel bars and other things piled up on the ground. The window was very small, so he could not see anything else. Outside, a few people were sitting in a circle. Lin Qifan was like a lackey, pouring water for everyone. He had always wanted to use Little Bun to change Xiaoqing. He had always believed that Xiaoqing still had some feelings for him. After all, a day together as husband and wife meant 100 days of love. 100 days together as husband and wife meant 100 days of love. As long as Xiaoqing was willing to forgive him, everything would be fine. His life would be better in the future. Then, a group of people came to Xiaoqing. They were very strong, and any one of them was stronger than the strongest paranormals Lin Qifan had ever met. They went straight to the point and asked Lin Qifan to cooperate with them to capture Little Bun and use him to threaten Xiaoqing. After the job was done, he would give him enough crystals and food to live for the rest of his life and let him go far away. Lin Qifan was moved. The reason why he wanted to win Xiaoqing's forgiveness was so that he could live a good life in the future. And the things that these people had promised him were too tempting. With these food and crystals, he could find a small base and live the rest of his life like a tyrant. Therefore, after Lin Qifan confirmed that they indeed had the financial resources, he decisively agreed. After he agreed, those people told him their plan. They wanted to use the Little Bun to lure Xiaoqing over and kill her. Lin Qifan only hesitated for a moment, then decisively cooperated with them to capture Little Bun. After all, it was not the first time that he had betrayed Xiaoqing. Therefore, Lin Qifan immediately took those people to the Qin family's gate and captured Little Bun. While they were capturing Little Bun, those people attacked Little Bun's bodyguards. Seeing how strong they were, Lin Qifan felt a lot more at ease. As long as Xiaoqing was dead, no one would take revenge on him, and he could live a good life in peace. "When should we send the message?" a burly man asked in a low, muffled voice. Another skinny man immediately said, "I thought it would take Xiaoqing a long time to get the message that her son is missing. I didn't expect her to come back so early. But it's not a big deal. Let's wait for a while. When the sky is slightly dark, we can make our move." Skinny man is right. When the time comes, we will stuff the letter under the Qin family's gate. Xiaoqing will definitely come over when she hears the news. She dotes on her son so much. When the time comes, we will take the opportunity to kill her. After completing the mission, we will quickly retreat. The man sitting in the middle said gloomily. Lin Qifan could not help but swallow his saliva when he heard that. It was not because he felt guilty, but because he was fantasizing about how happy he could live after obtaining those things. Chapter 355. Let's do that. The man rubbed his hands and said, "Leave the delivery to me. Where are you going?" A faint voice suddenly sounded in the room. The man said impatiently, "Didn't I just tell you? Go to the Qin family, Qin." Halfway through his words, he suddenly felt that something was wrong. If he remembered correctly, there was no woman in their group. So, where did this woman's voice come from? The door suddenly rumbled and shattered into a pile of wood dregs, which then scattered all over the ground. Xiaoqing clapped her hands and calmly walked in. She glanced around and asked coldly, "Where's my son?" The room was silent. No one knew how Xiaoqing came here. What did they do to make Xiaoqing come here? Kill her. The leader gritted his teeth and said. The people around him immediately rushed forward. Two people walked out from Xiaoqing's side, one on the left and one on the right. One was Dai, and the other was Yan Qiue. Yan Qiue stood in front and raised her hand. She clenched her fist and squeezed the air around one of the people. Blood and flesh splattered all over the floor. It was a horrible scene. On the other side, Dai had rushed into the crowd. His fingernails were as sharp as blades. Anyone who touched his fingernails would have a large piece of flesh torn off. Some people had already noticed that he was different from the others. They immediately screamed, "Zombies!" Xiaoqing took a step forward. The vines followed her movements and drilled out of the ground. This group of people was too weak to withstand a single blow. Lin Qifan felt that something was wrong. He swallowed his saliva in horror and stepped back silently. When Xiaoqing and the others didn't notice him, he had already retreated to the warehouse in the backyard. More than a dozen paranormals couldn't last more than 5 minutes in the hands of Xiaoqing and the other two people. Ignoring the blood on the floor, Xiaoqing said anxiously, "Let's find the baby first." At that moment, Little Bun was trying to save himself. Before he could figure out if he could crawl out of the window, Little Bun heard the sound of the door being unlocked. Immediately after, Lin Qifan pushed open the door and walked in. The Little Bun was full of vigilance, but he still looked confused. He whispered, "Are you here to play with me? But I'm in a bad mood right now, so I don't want to play." Lin Qifan still had the smell of blood on him. He looked at the little bun with a dark expression and walked forward without saying a word. The little bun was very nervous, but he didn't show it on his face. He leaned into the corner, and before he could say anything, he heard Xiaoqing's voice. "Son, where are you?" The little bun's eyes immediately lit up. His mother had come to save him.
Mama.
"I'm here." As soon as Little Bun finished speaking, Lin Qifan rushed over, as if trying to make Little Bun a hostage. Yaya had been squatting on the side, motionless. When she saw Lin Qifan rushing over, Yaya immediately jumped up and slapped Lin Qifan's face with her rabbit paw. Lin Qifan was an ordinary person, so how could he withstand a high-level mutated animal's foot? He was slapped to the wall by Yaya's paw. Xiaoqing heard the noise and quickly ran over. She was surprised and happy to see Little Bun squatting in the room. She quickly went up and hugged Little Bun. Her voice was choked with sobs. "You scared me to death. You scared me to death. Mama, don't be scared. Don't be scared." Little Bun gently patted Xiaoqing's back and whispered, "The baby is fine, look." Xiaoqing hugged Little Bun tightly. She felt tears in her eyes, but there wasn't even a drop of tear. She only breathed heavily and couldn't help but choke with sobs. Her heart was on the verge of breaking down. Chapter 356. She had never been so scared before. Even though she had almost died a few times, she had never been so scared. The little bun was more important than her life. Anyone who wanted to take her baby away was the same as taking her life. Xiaoqing hugged the little bun tightly, unwilling to let go for even a second. Seeing this, Lin Qifan tried to leave. He crawled out from the corner, but before he could take 2 steps, he was kicked back by Yaya. The noise woke Xiaoqing up. When Xiaoqing turned to look at Lin Qifan, her eyes were red with anger. At that moment, she really wanted to tear him into pieces. Otherwise, she wouldn't be able to quench the hatred in her heart. Lin Qifan felt a strong murderous aura from Xiaoqing. He shrank back in fear, as though he was walking on the edge of death. His heart was about to explode from the stimulation. Lin Qifan was very scared.
He didn't want to die.
He hadn't lived long enough. He wanted to continue living. Xiaoqing hated him to the core. Step by step, she walked towards him. Lin Qifan tried to escape, but Xiaoqing stepped on his leg. Xiaoqing used a lot of strength in her kick, and Lin Qifan's leg bones were instantly shattered. He screamed in pain, and beads of sweat began to form on his forehead. Don't kill me." Lin Qifan hugged his leg and rolled on the ground in pain. He finally calmed himself down. Then, he crawled 2 steps and hugged Xiaoqing's leg. Ah Qing, even if you don't look at anything else, for the sake of our past relationship, please let me go. I swear, as long as you let me go, I will immediately leave the capital and the entire north. I will never appear in front of you again." Xiaoqing lowered her head and glanced at him. She couldn't help but say, "Disgusting." She had never seen such a disgusting man. Back then, she must have been blind to fall in love with such a man. Lin Qifan didn't care about what Xiaoqing said. He hugged Xiaoqing's leg tightly and said with tears and snot, "You know how much I love you. For the sake of our relationship, please let me go."
I was forced by them.
They threatened me. They wanted to kill me. I had no choice but to do this. Xiaoqing couldn't take it anymore. She kicked him away. Yan Qiue and Er Dai walked over. They glanced at Lin Qifan. Yan Qiue said coldly, "Ah Qing, kill him. I feel disgusted just by looking at him. Did he have a heart or not? How could he do such a thing again and again, and then beg for her forgiveness with such a disgusting face after the fact?" In any case, they had learned something new. Don't kill me. Don't kill me. Lin Qifan wanted to hug Xiaoqing's leg and cry. Unfortunately, Xiaoqing despised him for being dirty and refused to let him near her. Xiaoqing looked at the crying Lin Qifan and suddenly smiled. "Tell me, what did you do wrong?" If you tell me clearly, I might spare your life." Lin Qifan was pleasantly surprised. He hurriedly said, "I really know that I was wrong. I shouldn't have done such a thing because of their threats. I almost harmed you and your son. It's only right that you hate me. I'm willing to compensate you, apologize to you, take care of you, and be a slave." "You know that's not what I want to hear," Xiao Qing said calmly. Lin Qifan gritted his teeth and suddenly slapped himself. "I'm worse than a beast. I was possessed. It's my fault. It's my fault. It's my fault. It's my fault." As he spoke, he slapped himself. He used quite a lot of strength. Soon his face was swollen. Xiao Qing kicked him and said softly, "All right, I forgive you. Don't worry. I won't kill you." Chapter 357. Without waiting for Lin Qifan to breathe a sigh of relief, Xiao Qing stepped on Lin Qifan's other leg. There weren't any wounds on this leg, so Xiao Qing crushed his leg bones. Not only his leg bones, but his arms were also crushed bit by her. Finally, she crushed the bones below his neck. In the end, almost all of Lin Qifan's bones were crushed by Xiao Qing. Those that couldn't be crushed were crushed by her. In the beginning, Lin Qifan would still beg for mercy. When the pain reached its peak, he would even curse. But in the end, he was exhausted and didn't speak anymore. He was just like a dying dog, lying on the ground, panting heavily and moaning softly. If it weren't for the moaning and the occasional twitching of his body, Xiao Qing would really think that he was dead. Because all the bones in his body were crushed, Lin Qifan was like a pile of mud, lying on the ground. Xiao Qing pulled out her military knife and cut his face again and again. Every cut was so deep that the bones could be seen, and the flesh was torn apart. That hatred, that sadness, that anger, all of it dissipated like smoke under the blade. When she finally cut off Lin Qifan's tongue, Xiao Qing suddenly felt that the depression in her heart had completely disappeared. After Xiao Qing finished everything, she then thought of a very serious problem. The scene was too bloody and Little Bun would be scared. She hurriedly carried Little Bun and walked out, bringing Yan Qiue and Air Dai with her. Only a pile of flesh was left on the ground. Lin Qifan's bones were all crushed, and his face was unrecognizable. Even his tongue was cut off. He could only lie there and wait for death. Xiao Qing slightly curved the corners of her lips. She promised that she wouldn't kill him. But in this world, there were too many things that were scarier than death. For example, living a life worse than death. However, Lin Qifan did not die. He had a superpower, which was an extraordinary recovery ability. It was an extremely selfish superpower. Although it was weak, it allowed him to survive. But he was better off dead than alive. From then on, there was no Lin Qifan in the world. He was just a beggar, dragging his rotten body and begging for food on the streets of the capital. He didn't have a tongue. Other than his hands, his body was almost like a pile of meat paste. When he begged for food, he used his hands to crawl forward. Sometimes, he would think about the first time he met Xiao Qing a long, long time ago. Her cold eyes suddenly opened with a hint of danger, like a blooming poisonous flower that captured his heart. He stood in the light while she sat in the shadows. As the light and darkness intertwined, for the first time, he went against his conscience and came into contact with trouble. As for betrayal, Lin Qifan thought it was probably because he was too greedy. At first, he was a little unwilling. Why was she better than him in everything? Even a man like him needed her to support him. Later, he wanted her to have a better life. He didn't want to be weaker than her, so he wanted to earn more. In the end, his greed led him step by step towards destruction. Perhaps this was his nature. Even if he fell in love with someone, the person he loved the most was still himself. Other than himself, he could sacrifice everything else. It wasn't easy for Xiao Qing to find her son. After that, she became a little abnormal. She started to like hugging the little bun all the time, whether it was when she was sleeping, eating, or walking. Every single moment. If she left little bun for more than a minute, she would panic. On the way back, She hugged Little Bun so tightly that Little Bun almost couldn't breathe. Chapter 358. Yan Qiue contacted Mr. Qin and dragged the bodies of the superpowered people back to try to identify them. She wanted to find out who was targeting Xiao Qing, who had a grudge against Xiao Qing. What was so deep that the other party didn't hesitate to set up a trap to kill Xiao Qing? Xiao Qing was very confused. Who had she offended? In the end, after much consideration, there was only one person left: Wu Buping. Previously, she had interfered in the matter between Wu Buping and Zhu Machin, causing Wu Buping's plan to target Zhu Machin to fail. Wu Buping must have hated her. However, such a small matter shouldn't make Wu Buping want to kill her so urgently, right? Xiao Qing scratched her head and sat on the sofa with Little Bun in her arms, waiting for the results. Finally, Mr. Qin came in and frowned. "I can't find them. I asked my subordinates to compare all the superpowered people recorded in the entire capital, but they couldn't find any of them. It seems that the person who did this is very cautious," Mr. Qin said with a headache. "I still need some time to investigate carefully. Check the superpowered people who have been in and out of the capital recently. Maybe I can find a few of them." Xiao Qing didn't think that Mr. Qin would be able to find them immediately. After all, if he wasn't a fool, he wouldn't hire a group of people who were easily exposed to be assassins. Besides, she already had a suspect. Other than Wu Buping, there shouldn't be a second person who had the ability to set up such a trap. Wu Buping was really ruthless. He wanted to kill her for such a small matter. He even sent so many superpowered people who were unclear about the background to set up such a meticulous trap. If Yi hadn't been quick-witted and left a mark, she really might have gone to this Hongmen banquet alone after receiving the letter. However, Wu Buping was destined not to be able to kill her. Because even if she went to the Hongmen banquet alone, with so few people, they couldn't kill her. Wu Buping underestimated her too much. Unless Wu Buping used the entire Mad Demon group to set up a trap, Xiao Qing wasn't afraid at all. Could Wu Buping send more than 2 level 5 superpowered people to kill her? Without more than 2 level 5 superpowered people, no one could stop her. "Sorry to trouble you," Xiao Qing said sincerely. Father Qin said with a cold face, "The child was kidnapped from my house. I have to bear a lot of responsibility, so you don't have to thank me." Xiao Qing's mouth twitched. She wasn't prepared to thank him. Father Qin continued, "I heard from the old man that he's almost done researching the strange fog you gave him last time. When he comes back, we can talk about it in detail." Old Master Qin was probably as anxious as Xiao Qing. He immediately led a group of people to look for the Little Bun. Although Papa Qin had already sent a message to inform him that the Little Bun had been found, he didn't rush back so quickly. Old Master Qin returned faster than Father Qin had expected. The moment he reached the door, he couldn't help but shout, "Where's the baby? Where's the baby? Didn't you say you found it?" "Grandpa, I'm here." The Little Bun was snuggling in Xiao Qing's arms. When he heard the sound, he quickly stuck his head out. Old Master Qin ran in like a gust of wind. His heart ached for the Little Bun, and he wanted to hug him. But when he remembered that he had just lost the Little Bun under his nose, he was too embarrassed to hug him. The Little Bun hurriedly went over. He cupped Old Master Qin's chin and kissed him. Then he said, "Grandpa, are you worried about the baby? Look at the baby. He's fine." Sigh, the baby is so obedient. Old Master Qin's heart ached terribly. He gave the Little Bun a loving kiss before they sat down to talk. After talking about the kidnapping, Old Master Qin said, "The results of the inspection of the fog are indeed out. It's already a type of chemical weapon. I'm going to send people to keep an eye on Wu Buping and the Mad Demon mercenary group. I think they must be doing similar experiments in secret." Father Qin nodded. Otherwise, it's impossible for them to develop this fog and directly make it into a weapon. This can only be made after many experiments. Xiao Qing's thoughts were almost all on the Little Bun. She only said, "I'll leave everything to the two of you. I think the Mad Demon mercenary group is very dangerous. It's best to send more people to keep an eye on them, just in case." Old Master Qin nodded and said, "We'll settle this matter tomorrow. The most important thing now is to investigate. The entire capital should know about the people targeting you and the baby. You're living in the Qin family, so there aren't many people who would dare to make a move." Xiao Qing thought for a moment and said, "I want to take the child and leave the capital first." Before she could finish speaking, Old Master Qin's eyeballs were about to fall out of their sockets. He was expressionless, but his voice sounded a little aggrieved. Is it because of this kidnapping incident? He was indeed in the wrong this time. He shouldn't have left the little bun alone outside. Otherwise, such a thing wouldn't have happened. Old Master Qin's confidence was very low, and his mood worsened. He had promised Xiao Qing that he would take good care of the little bun, but in the end, the little bun was kidnapped. More importantly, Xiao Qing was the one who found the little bun and saved the little bun. This made the old man even less confident. But he really didn't want the little bun to leave. He liked the little bun very much, just like how he liked his own grandson. But now that the little bun was leaving, he didn't know when he would be able to see him again. The capital was so far away from S City. Xiao Qing and the little bun couldn't come over every few days. First of all, there wasn't enough time. This meant that it would be very difficult for him to see the little bun again. Old Master Qin was very dispirited. He felt wronged and pitiful. He huddled in the corner and didn't say a word, because he knew that he had no right to ask the little bun to stay. Seeing Old Master Qin depressed and sitting in the corner, looking very pitiful, Xiao Qing couldn't help but say, "There's one more thing that I need to trouble you with." Old Master Qin pulled himself together and asked, "What is it?" Xiao Qing smiled and said, "Can you find me a house in the capital? I want to buy a house." Chapter 359. Old Master Qin immediately perked up. Xiao Qing was going to buy a house in the capital? Did that mean that she was going to settle down in Jing City? As long as Xiao Qing settled down in Jing City, he would be able to see the little bun more often. It was a great thing. Old Master Qin was very happy about Xiao Qing's kindness. He waved his hand and said, "You can go back to the S City survivor base. I promise that I will find a good house for you by the time you come back." "Thank you, Old Master." Xiao Qing smiled. She liked the Qin family from the bottom of her heart. They were really good to them. Before they left, Qin Zishi held a farewell party for Xiao Qing and the others. Then, she reluctantly sent Xiao Qing and the others to the gate. She even wanted to send Xiao Qing and the others back to the S City survivor base. But in the end, Xiao Qing still rejected him. Giving each other gifts was like taking off one's pants to fart. It was unnecessary. Then, the group went back to the S City survivor base. When they arrived, it was afternoon. There were not many outsiders in the base. After entering the base, they found that there were not many people in the base. Xiao Qing asked someone and found out that most of the people in the base had been sent to clean up the original S City. Because of the rapid evolution of zombies, the current S City survivor base was becoming more and more unsafe. Therefore, the higher-ups of the base set their sights on the original S City. They were trying to clean up S City and rebuild the defense system. Then, they would move all the people in the S City survivor base into the city. In this way, the safety index would be much higher. However, it was not easy to clean up a city, especially a city that had been occupied by zombies for a long time. Zombies ran rampant in the city. There were third-level zombies, fourth-level zombies, and even fifth-level zombies. It was said that a few days ago, the base first cleared the zombies near the electric industry building and took control of the signal tower in S City. Now, the people in the area had already recovered their communication. The base was currently cleaning up the area around the electric industry building. They had to clear out all the zombies and then move back into S City. From Xiao Qing's point of view, it was necessary. The current protective measures in the S City survivor base were simply too crude. Once they encountered a large zombie horde, the entire base would be trampled to pieces by the zombie horde. After moving back to S City, at least their safety was guaranteed. They didn't have to worry about zombies attacking the city in the middle of the night when they were asleep. After receiving the news, Xiao Qing left with her friends. No matter what, she was about to leave the S-City survivor base and move into the capital survivor base. She had nothing to do with what happened here. When they returned, Fu Jingma was cooking. Upon hearing that Xiao Qing and the rest were back, Fu Jingma stopped cooking and ran out with his apron. Fu Jingma was pleasantly surprised. "You guys are back." Xiao Qing nodded and said, "I'm going to pack up and move to the Kyoto survivor base." Her expression was very calm, but Fu Jingma was shocked. However, he still said seriously, "I'll go wherever you go."
It's okay.
Xiao Qing didn't say anything. She just asked Yan Hanqing to come over and cook. After dinner, the group went back to their own homes to sleep. The next morning, Xiao Qing took her friends and prepared to leave. Before leaving, she had to go to the base and cancel the registration. Then, she would go to the capital and register again. Chapter 360. In the lobby, after Xiao Qing explained her purpose, the girl in charge of registration was in a dilemma. It was as troublesome as changing one's nationality. She flipped through Xiao Qing's information and said, "Theoretically, you can cancel your household registration, but what?" Gu Panpan, who was short-tempered, asked. In order to prevent people who change their permanent residence every few days and bring unnecessary trouble to the staff, the base has a rule that if you want to cancel your household registration, you must have enough contribution points. "But you don't have enough," the pretty girl said embarrassedly. "If you don't have enough contribution points, you can't cancel your household registration." Xiao Qing frowned. She never knew there was such a rule. It was really troublesome. Then Xiao Qing asked, "How many contribution points do we need?" "Not much. If you all want to cancel your household registration, you need more than 100 contribution points," the girl said seriously. Xiao Qing thought for a while and asked, "Is there a way to earn contribution points quickly?" "Yes, you can complete important tasks such as clearing the zombies in S-City this time. As long as you clear a certain number of zombies, you can get enough contribution points," the girl said gently. The girl said very gently. Xiao Qing immediately made the decision. "Accept this mission for us." It was a piece of cake for her to clear a certain number of zombies. She just needed to take her air die and find a remote place to shout. Then there would be endless zombies coming to kill her. However, when they were leaving, Gu Panpan was still angry. "Have you heard that other bases need contribution points to cancel their household registration? They are obviously bullying us. Seeing that we are leaving, they deliberately asked us to do something for the base." Xiao Qing rubbed her head and said, "Clear a certain number of zombies. This task is quite fast. Don't worry." They went back to pack up and prepared to enter the abandoned S-City. The entire S-City had been occupied by zombies for a long time. It was difficult to drive all the zombies out. As long as there was one zombie left, they would be doomed when they moved back to S-City. After all, there were many ordinary people in the S-City survivor base. If 1 or 2 zombies jumped out from the corner and bit one of the survivors, then the entire base would be doomed. Therefore, it was particularly troublesome to search. They had to ensure that the entire city was completely under the control of the humans before they could declare it a success. Therefore, the people who came to hunt zombies were divided into 3 groups. Some people were responsible for the first round of rough hunting, eliminating most of the zombies that were walking on the surface. The second group was responsible for patrolling around, searching every nook and cranny of the place that could still be found. The third type of people was the most important. They carefully inspected wave after wave, looking for fish that had slipped through the net. After 3 waves of people, it was still not over. The base would send people over to look for any stray zombies, kill all the zombies they could see, and bring them back safely to the base. When Xiao Qing and the others accepted the task, the base had already been strangled for a period of time. The power plant was the main target, and a large area around it had been cleaned up. Therefore, Xiao Qing and the others found a place and began to clean up the zombies. Low-level zombies were a piece of cake for Xiao Qing and the others. They even played do diju while killing zombies. Because 2 people were enough to kill zombies, the others were playing cards. Whoever lost the most would be responsible for cleaning up the zombies for a period of time. Chapter 361. Even so, it only took them 3 days to clear all the zombies nearby. Later on, as long as there were zombies, they would run away when they saw them. After all, they were scared of being killed. Xiao Qing was usually the one who cleaned up the zombies because she didn't like to play cards. Moreover, she was the most lethal one among all of them. It could be said that Xiao Qing was like a meat grinder, constantly killing zombies. Within a few days, they had collected enough zombie nuclei for contribution points. After collecting enough nuclei, Xiao Qing took them back. She went to the hall and reported the number of zombies they had killed in the past 2 days. Then she took out the nuclei as evidence and quietly waited for them to report the result. The face of the girl in charge of registration changed. She looked at the nuclei and couldn't help but ask, "Did you kill all these?" Xiao Qing nodded and said, "We should have gathered enough contribution points, right?" Unexpectedly, the girl hesitated for a while and then said, "Not enough." Xiao Qing frowned and asked, "Didn't you calculate at that time?" "How could it not be enough? We killed according to the number you gave us, and there were even some extra." The girl said, "At that time, it was enough, but I miscalculated. It's not that all of you need 100 contribution points, it's that each of you needs 100 contribution points. That's why it's only enough for one person's contribution points." Xiao Qing's face immediately sank. She didn't expect that the base would do such a thing. This was clearly the base's intention. That was, they wouldn't let them go even if they acted shamelessly. Before, everyone only needed 100 contribution points, but now it suddenly became 100 contribution points for each person. Wasn't this playing with them? This was simply bullying them on purpose. Before Xiao Qing could get angry, the girl said, "And this way, you can't prove that these nuclei were all hunted by you this time, so I can't. What the fuck is this?" Gu Panpan had a bad temper. She immediately jumped out and pointed at the girl's nose. Previously, everyone needed 100 contribution points. Now, everyone needs 100 contribution points. Do you have to be so greedy? Gu Panpan slammed the counter and said, "If you don't give me an explanation today, I won't let you off." The girl wanted to cry, but had no tears. She said softly, "I really didn't decide this. It was decided by the higher-ups. You're not done with me. I can't do anything about it. I'm just following the rules." "Is this how the rules work?" Gu Panpan sneered, then said, "You still want us to prove that we killed these zombies? This is the same as asking me to prove whether or not I'm a woman. If this is a nonsense, then what is?" The girl stuttered for a long time before she said, "It's not that I want to make things difficult for you. It's the request of the higher-ups, including checking if the zombies were killed in S City." Seeing this, Gu Panpan sneered. "To put it bluntly, you just don't want to let us go, right? Why are you still looking for excuses?" The girl stopped talking. Even if she asked again, she would only say, "It's the rule of the higher-ups." Gu Panpan was so angry that she stomped her feet. The key was, how could they prove that they killed those zombies in S City? Should they cut off the zombie's head every time they killed a zombie and bring it back for her to see? Xiao Qing patted Gu Panpan's shoulder and shook his head at her. The whole base of S City was under the command of the base chief. Of course, whatever he said would be the law. They didn't even have room to refute. This time, it was obvious that it was too troublesome to clean up S City, so the base chief needed a lot of fighters. Xiao Qing and the others' fighting ability was also very high in the base, which could be seen from their completion records. It should be a normal rule that they needed contribution points to cancel their household registration, but everyone still needed contribution points. It was probably a temporary decision made by the higher-ups after reading the information of Xiao Qing and the others. After all, it was not easy to find such good fighters. It would be a pity if they let them go. It was better to make use of the waste and let them kill more zombies in S City. This way, the base would save more trouble. Look, this was such a smart idea. Xiao Qing's eyes were cold. She knocked on the window and asked, 100 contribution points per person, right? There won't be any changes.
Yes.
The pretty girl hurriedly said, as long as you bring back enough nuclei, you can pass the inspection and get contribution points. You don't need to prove that these zombies are from S City? Xiao Qing said lightly. The girl coughed and said, I believe you. What were you doing earlier? Chapter 362. Like thieves, the group of paranormals slipped into an empty shop along the corner. Only then did they breathe a sigh of relief and sit down to rest. The leader took some compressed biscuits and mixed them with water for everyone. While eating, he asked the only girl in the team, what's the completion rate of the mission now? The girl calculated and then said with a bitter face, it's just close to 70%. Immediately, someone said in surprise, we've been in S City for more than a week. How come the completion rate is still so low? Another person chimed in, that's right, I remember it was 60% 3 days ago. Xiao Jing, did you calculate it wrong? The girl named Xiao Jing almost burst into tears at that time. I didn't calculate it wrong. It's just that we've been robbed too many times in the past 2 days. Speaking of this, everyone was silent. After a long time, one person cursed, motherfucker. Where did this group of perverts come from? Can't they let us live? We just encircled a nest of zombies, and they came out and harvested all the nuclei like magic. Well, what else can we say when we're not as good as them? Let's get to work. After resting for a while, the leader stood up and said, the sooner we finish the mission, the sooner we can go back to the base. The group of people left the temporary resting place and continued to kill zombies. They were lucky. Not long after they left the resting place, they encountered a group of second-level and third-level zombies, but there were a lot of them. Get ready. The leader raised his hand and quietly approached, followed by a group of excited paranormals. There were 30 to 40 zombies in this wave. If they killed all of them, their completion rate of the mission would increase by 1%. A group of people quickly surrounded them. They activated their special abilities and prepared for a beautiful wave of siege. Before they could do anything, a man and a woman suddenly descended from the sky. The woman was muscular and looked very strong. The man was so fast that he almost pulled out an afterimage. As soon as the two of them entered the zombie crowd, they were like two meat grinders, crazily slaughtering. After the two of them, there was a very handsome and serious-looking man. He raised his hand, and a thunder and lightning appeared. The zombies that were enveloped by the electric net were directly electrocuted into ashes, leaving only the shining crystal in the ashes. The higher-leveled ones were also burnt, emitting a strange smell. Soon, the group of zombies was cleared by the 3 people. After the woman who looked like a King Kong Barbie collected all the nuclei, she waved her hand and said, it's done. Next place, let's go. The 3 of them were like the wind, coming and going in a hurry, leaving behind a group of people who were dumbfounded as they stared at their departing backs. After a long while, Xiao Jing couldn't help swearing, it's them again. Damn it. On the other side, Xiao Qing, Xiao Tong, Yan Qiue, and Little Bun had just finished a wave of killing. A small zombie group, led by a level 4 zombie, was cleared by them. As soon as they entered S City, Xiao Qing divided their small team into groups. The Gu siblings and Yan Hanqing were responsible for wandering around and killing zombies. She, Xiao Tong, and Yan Qiue were responsible for clearing the fixed zombie groups, such as large shopping malls and schools, which were densely packed with zombies. As for the rest, Air Dai was simply left alone. S City was originally Air Dai's hometown. As soon as he came back, he was like a fish in water. He went everywhere to find the high-level zombie leaders. If he could defeat them, he would kill them. If he couldn't, he would call his friends to help him. In short, life was very happy. Chapter 363. Every afternoon, the whole team would gather at the designated place and pile up the nuclei. After verifying them, the contribution would be calculated. Now we have 1,018 level 2 zombie nuclei, 532 level 3 zombie nuclei, and 41 level 4 zombie nuclei. After calculating, Gu Panfan said to Xiao Qing, according to the calculation, we now have enough contribution points for 5 people. The conversion ratio between contribution points and nuclei given by the staff was simply ridiculous. If it were an ordinary team of paranormals, they might not be able to gather enough nuclei, even after several months. Unfortunately, they encountered a group of abnormal people. The weakest one among them, Xiao Bao, was already a level 3 paranormal. A group of level 4 paranormals and Xiao Qing, who was a level 5 paranormals, were simply a zombie harvester. Let's wait for one more day. If we still haven't gathered enough nuclei by tomorrow afternoon, we will gather together and find a place with a lot of zombies to clean up. Xiao Qing gritted his teeth and said coldly. She had a good impression of S City. After all, she had lived there for a long time, and it was also the place where she met Gu Panpan and the others. It was very meaningful. However, what happened in the base had erased all her good impression of it. Now, she just wanted to leave S City as soon as possible and get away from this place completely. Except for that, she had no second thoughts. After finding a safe place to sleep for a night, the group separated again. Xiao Qing carried Xiao Bao on his back and took Xiao Tong and Yan Qiue to the next destination. This time, he had his eyes on a large market far from the city center. There was a very long pedestrian street here. After the apocalypse, the movement of zombies was very high. There were many zombies living here, and many of them could be considered mobile zombies. If they could clean up from one end of the market to the other, it was very likely that their task would be completed. However, it was very difficult, especially when there was a large number of zombies on the opposite side. After passing through the threshold, Xiao Qing found that there were not many zombies walking on the street, and most of the shops were open. After all, it was daytime, so those zombies didn't come out. Most of them were hiding, waiting for night to come. Xiao Qing didn't want to wait, because when night came, those zombies' strength would be a little bit higher, and they would be very troublesome to clean up. The disadvantage of daytime was that they had to look for zombies in the rooms, and they had to look for zombies one by one behind the curtains, under the shelves, and so on. In short, zombies could be found in all kinds of strange places, which was quite interesting. Xiao Qing led her friends to look for zombies to kill. The speed at which she killed zombies was frightening. Her vines shot out with a whoosh and skewered a zombie into a stick of candied hawthorn. Soon, those zombies jumped out by themselves. Xiao Qing and the others only needed to walk around to kill a lot of zombies. According to this speed, tomorrow may not be enough. Xiao Qing sighed and then said, Yan Qiue had to come for her. It doesn't matter if it's 1 or 2 days later. It's normal that it's troublesome to leave the base. After a short rest, Xiao Qing went to kill zombies. After a while, she suddenly heard Air Dai's sharp voice calling them. The group of people didn't say anything, leaving the zombies that they were killing, and ran towards the direction of Air Dai's voice. Chapter 364. Luckily, Air Dai didn't like to be too far away from Xiao Qing, so he had been wandering around nearby. When Xiao Qing and the others heard the noise, they hurried over. Erdai was unable to hold on any longer. The ones besieging him were 2 zombies, 2 identical zombies. These 2 zombies were wearing shabby school uniforms. One on the left and one on the right, they besieged Erdai. They looked exactly the same. The only difference was that one had a red left eye, while the other had a red right eye. When they were still alive, they should have been twins. Probably because they were twins, they had a great tacit understanding with each other. Their cooperation was perfect, and they were stronger than Air Dai. At that moment, Air Dai was in danger. Xiao Qing saw that Air Dai was injured from a distance. Her eyes turned red, and she whipped the ground with her 2 vine whips. As a boost, she bounced out like a cannonball. She quickly landed in the battle circle, and the 2 zombies were shocked. These 2 zombies were the overlords of this area. They led a group of subordinates and lived a carefree life. Then Air Dai appeared. What should they do when other powerful zombies invaded their territory?
Kick them out.
Or kill them directly. As a result, Air Dai, who was killing in the zombie crowd, was targeted by 2 zombies. The two zombies were hiding in the zombie crowd. When Erdai's attention was on the ordinary zombies, the two zombies rushed out from the left and right side of him. Erdai didn't have time to react. Two pieces of flesh were scratched off, and one of the zombies almost tore off his arm. Erdai hurriedly called for help. Xiaoqing landed on the ground. The vines in her hand seemed to be alive. They drilled out and entangled one of the zombies. She directly pulled the zombie to her side. The other zombie was shocked and quickly jumped away to avoid being caught by Xiaoqing. Xiaoqing reached out her hand. Her 5 fingers were like knives stabbing into tofu. She easily pierced the zombie's head and took out the zombie's nucleus. The zombie was probably irritated by his brother's death. It screamed and was about to run away. Revenge was a dish best served cold, not to mention a zombie. How could Xiaoqing let it go? She immediately threw out a vine and chased after it. Then, the poor zombie was easily dragged back by Xiaoqing. Xiaoqing opened its skull and dug out its crystal nucleus. Erdai was badly injured. There was a scratch on his face. He looked very pitiful. When he saw Xiaoqing coming over, he directly jumped on her and hung his whole body on Xiaoqing. Xiaoqing quickly caught Erdai. She held Erdai soft but with one hand and said, "It feels good." Then she gently pinched it. Yan Qiyu immediately pretended to cough twice to remind Xiaoqing. However, Xiaoqing didn't notice. She held Erdai's butt and rubbed Erdai's wound. Then she gave the 2 high-level zombie nuclei to Erdai for him to absorb. Erdai wasn't pretentious at all. After kissing Xiaoqing, he took the 2 zombie nuclei and absorbed them on the spot. Erdai's recovery speed was fast. When he absorbed the nuclei, his recovery speed was even faster. The wounds on his body were almost healed at a speed visible to the naked eye. Especially the scars on his body. Even the scars faded away. Moreover, after absorbing the 2 nuclei, Erdai's aura was constantly improving. It rose little by little at a very fast speed. When it reached the peak, there was a short delay. Then, with a boom, he became the last level 4 superpower possessor in the team. Chapter 365. When Xiaoqing saw Erdai curled into a ball and shivered in the corner because of his body, her heart ached terribly. Perhaps Xiaoqing had treated Erdai like a child at the very beginning. If she hadn't just become a mother at that time, and if it hadn't been for the fact that Erdai was different from ordinary zombies, perhaps she would have killed Erdai when they first met. However, after getting along with each other for a long time, their relationship had changed. They had gone through life and death together again and again, and the special situation that happened that time had made their relationship impure. If Erdai was an ordinary person who could be responsible for his own decisions, Xiaoqing might have chosen to be with him. However, she couldn't do that now. He had no memory and was just like a child. Everything was taught by Xiaoqing. If Xiaoqing was with him now, what would happen when Erdai regained his memory? Would he regret it? Would he think that she was taking advantage of him? It could be said that the relationship between her and Erdai was really messy. As for Yan Qiyu, sometimes Xiaoqing despised herself. When Yan Qiyu confessed to her, she rejected his feelings on one hand, but didn't reject his approach on the other hand. It was like a whore who wanted to maintain her chastity. The men around her were all very nice to her, so she couldn't make a choice and could only pretend that she didn't know. However, this couldn't work. Sooner or later, she would have to make a choice. She would choose one of the men and give up the others, or she would choose none and leave with the child. After thinking for a long time, Xiaoqing looked at Erdai in the corner and said softly to Yan Qiyu, "It's cold at night. I forgot to bring a quilt when I went out." Yan Qiyu stared at Xiaoqing for a while and then chuckled. "I'll go outside and find some clean beds." Yan Qiyu definitely knew what she was going to do. Xiaoqing felt bitter in her mouth. She asked Erdai to play with the little bun at the door and then walked to Erdai. Erdai lowered his head silently. There were blue veins on his neck because of his endurance. He didn't know where the unbearable pain came from and how to relieve it. However, He didn't want Xiaoqing to feel embarrassed, so he would rather continue to endure it. Xiaoqing touched his neck and whispered, "Raise your head and look at me." Dai raised his head obediently. There was still some grievance in his eyes, and he looked pitiful. Xiaoqing lowered her head and kissed Dai's eyes gently. Then she said, "Close your eyes."
Don't look at me.
She felt disgusted when she was looked at by such pure eyes. However, Dai was stubborn and refused to close his eyes. He looked at Xiaoqing in a daze, and the grievance in his eyes became more and more intense. Xiaoqing sighed softly. In the end, she reached out and held the source of evil. She said helplessly, "If only you could remember everything. Then she wouldn't have to feel guilty and bear such a burden. She could make her own decision clearly and decisively." Yan Qiu seriously went out and found several new quilts. Then she hugged the soft quilt and sat at the door for a long time. Occasionally, there would be one or two low gasps and Dai's suppressed roars from inside. Every time this happened, his fingers would grip the corner of the quilt so tightly that his knuckles would turn white. How could he not be jealous? He was so jealous that he went crazy. How could he not be sad?
He was so sad that he wanted to die.
How could he not be resentful? He hated her so much that his heart, liver, spleen, and lungs were all in a mess. The woman he cherished, the woman he was willing to treat as his queen, was doing the most intimate thing with another man at this moment. However, he couldn't do anything but swallow the sweetness in his throat. Chapter 366. If someone were to pay attention to Yan Qiu at this moment, they would discover that his eyes were completely red and his expression was twisted into a hideous expression due to the extreme repression. The jealousy, pain, and torment that welled up in his heart nearly drove Yan Qiu crazy. He raised his hand and fiercely bit his wrist, tearing open his flesh and letting his blood drip out. This kind of physical pain should have brought him the most joy, but at this moment, it couldn't alleviate even the slightest bit of his pain. Yan Qiu curled into a ball and continuously bit the skin on his arm. In the end, he knelt on the floor and hugged the blanket. He buried his face in the blanket and tightly covered it until the feeling of suffocation caused his mind to go blank. Only then did he slowly let go of his hand and lay on the floor, losing all his strength. After a long, long time, there was no sound in the room. Yan Qiu fiercely rubbed his face and tried his best to make his expression look more normal. Then he pulled his sleeves and covered his scarred arm before walking in with the blanket. There was still an ambiguous atmosphere in the room. Xiaoqing was already dressed neatly and expressionlessly walked into the room with Dai in her arms. Yan Qiu followed and then took a step before Xiaoqing. He changed the old blanket on the bed, cleaned the dust, and put on the new one. Then Xiaoqing put Dai under the blanket. Dai had already fallen into a deep sleep. Xiaoqing pulled the blanket over him, and for a moment, she didn't know what to say. The atmosphere was extremely awkward. Yan Qiu lowered her delicate eyes. After a while, she tried to find a topic to talk about. "When we reach the capital, I must tell old Master Qin to find a spacious house for me. I want to buy a large bed, the kind that can allow several people to roll around on it. It's comfortable to sleep." "Qiu, do you like freedom?" Xiaoqing didn't want to disturb Dai, so she walked to the balcony. She had never smoked in the past since smoking was bad for her health. But now, whenever she was frustrated, she would smoke a cigarette. Yan Qiu's face immediately paled. He leaned against the balcony door and said in a low voice, "Why are you suddenly asking me this?" Xiaoqing holds the railing and looks at the dilapidated house not far away. Her heart is empty and a little sore. "It's too tiring and hard to follow me. You have to run around almost every day. I can't give you anything. It's better for you to live in the Linchuan base. Someone will provide for you. You just need to do the experiments you like and do whatever you want." "What are you trying to say?" Yan Qiu's fingertips were trembling. He stared at Xiaoqing, his eyes red with anger and pain. Xiaoqing was shocked. Then she smiled bitterly. I'm not trying to drive you away. I just think you deserve better. Yan Qiyu grabbed Xiaoqing's hand and said coldly, You always think that you're strong and that you're always willing to make decisions for others. But have you ever thought about my feelings? I'm cheap. I just like to follow you. Even if you don't like me, I'll stick to you shamelessly. Even if you hate me, I'll secretly watch you. Yan Qiyue's whole body clung to Xiaoqing like a snake clinging to a tree. He kept moving closer to Xiaoqing. Finally, he gently stuck out the tip of his tongue and licked Xiaoqing's neck. Xiaoqing reflexively wanted to break away, but she smelled blood. She lowered her head and grabbed Yan Qiue's arm. When she pulled it up, his sleeve loosened, revealing his scarred arm. Xiaoqing subconsciously tightened her grip on Yan Qiue's wrist. She couldn't help but be angry. She kept making all kinds of food and thought of all kinds of ways to nourish his body. In the end, he ruined himself. Chapter 367. The word master sounded like a Japanese manga. It was filthy and full of filth. Promise me this once. Yan Qiyu looked at Xiaoqing pitifully. Xiaoqing felt her scalp tingle. She had to say, I'll do as you say. For some reason, she suddenly imagined Yan Qiyu wearing a maid's uniform with nothing inside. When she came home, Yan Qiyu came over with a pair of slippers. He changed her shoes and asked her with a flirtatious look, Welcome home, master. Do you want to eat first or eat me first? That's so scary. Can I choose to eat or die first? After much difficulty, Xiaoqing finally finished applying the ointment on a certain one. Xiaoqing glanced at him and saw that his upper body had been torn to shreds by Xiaoqing. His pants were also unrecognizable, and one of his shoes was still hanging outside the window. From the front, it looked normal. From the back, it was full of red whip marks. It was very ambiguous. Xiaoqing had no choice but to carry Yan Qiyu and walk into the room. In the end, she stuffed him into the quilt. Yan Qiyu only had his head exposed. He lay in the quilt happily and whispered, It's already so late. Come in and sleep. If you don't eat, Xiao Tong still has to eat. Xiaoqing rolled her eyes. She reached into the quilt like a rogue and slapped Yan Qiyue's butt. Then she said, Sleep well. I'll go and cook. After she went out to cook, Yan Qiyu turned over with a melancholy face and stared at Dai. In fact, as long as Xiaoqing was willing, he was willing to share Xiaoqing with Dai. Just like before, the three of them lived a good life together. But needless to say, Xiaoqing was the kind of person who would instantly turn into an old cadre when faced with such a situation. She would never agree to such a ridiculous thing. In fact, if it was possible to monopolize Xiaoqing, who would be willing to share her with other men? Even he was unwilling to do that. He just didn't want to lose Xiaoqing because he knew very well that in Xiaoqing's heart, Dai would always be more important than him. If one day, Xiaoqing was willing to accept both of them at the same time, he would be the one taking advantage. Because the first person to meet Xiaoqing and enter Xiaoqing's heart was Dai, and he was just a latecomer. On the other side, Xiaoqing finished cooking and fed Xiao Tong and Little Bun. She asked Xiao Tong to take Little Bun to sleep and then went back to the house. The two men were lying on the bed, sleeping soundly. They consciously left the middle space, just enough for one person to lie down. It felt as if the first wife and the second wife were waiting for her to go home and sleep. Xiaoqing struggled for a minute, then got into the bed and prepared to sleep. The two men who were sleeping soundly immediately came up to her, one on her left and one on her right. Xiaoqing's mouth twitched, but she couldn't be bothered and fell asleep. The next day, Dai was the first to wake up. He turned sideways and peeked at Xiaoqing. His eyes were filled with joy, satisfaction, and a little shyness. Xiaoqing cared about him after all. She didn't want him to suffer, and she didn't want him to suffer. Thinking of this, he was satisfied. The next to wake up was Yan Qiyu, but Xiaoqing was the last to wake up. She had done 2 physical activities in a row last night, and she had thought so much. She was dead tired. As soon as Xiao Qing woke up, the 2 men gave her a good morning kiss from each side and salivated all over her face. Then she kicked each of them off the bed. Then Xiao Qing got up and went to cook. Yesterday's incident was too sudden, so they didn't have enough work to do. Today, they had to continue to work and get more crystal cores to make up for the contribution points. So after breakfast, the group started to get busy. Air Dai and Yen Qiue, who were satisfied, were very active today, especially Air Dai. He was like the wind, rushing here and there. Every time he came back, he would hold a pile of crystal cores and give them to Xiao Qing, as if they were treasures. His behavior was just like a boyfriend in love giving gifts to his girlfriend. And he was much crazier than those boyfriends. Every time he came back, he was hurt all over, but he didn't get tired. In the end, he was slapped to the ground by Xiao Qing and calmed down. Okay, now that we're full, it's time to work. The whole S-City was not small. Even if all the paranormals in the capital were called to clean it up, it would take more than a month to finish the preliminary cleaning. After the preliminary cleaning, there would be a second cleaning and even a third cleaning. They had to check round by round until they were sure that there was not a single zombie in the whole city. Only then could the survivors in the base move in. So the S-City survivor base almost mobilized all the paranormals in the base to clean up S-City. The expected goal was to move into S-City within half a year. Xiao Qing led her friends. No matter where they went, they would meet the cleaning teams of the S-City survivor base. Generally speaking, she would avoid them. If they met a large number of zombies, she would take her friends and cut them up. Therefore, their fame soon spread to all the paranormal squads in S-City. Almost everyone knew that there was such a squad, known as the Zombie Meat Grinder, crazily cleaning up zombies everywhere. The north of the city has been cleaned up by them. Let's go to the south. Xiao Qing pointed at the crystal cores and said helplessly, Okay, let's inform them. We'll go there first. Yen Hanqing nodded seriously, then gave the signal to Yen Qiue and the others. After a simple communication, Xiao Qing led Air Dai and the others to the south of the city. They didn't know whether they were lucky or unlucky, but soon after they arrived at the south of the city, they encountered a large number of zombies. Chapter 368. Those zombies were provoked, so they rushed over from all directions, trying to surround the small group of paranormals in the middle, which seemed to have no sense of existence in the zombie crowd. Xiao Qing saw the group of zombies from a distance. She calculated and found that as long as they cleaned up this wave of zombies, they would have enough contribution points. Without another word, Xiao Qing released a signal flare and prepared to call the rest of her friends over. After all, the more the merrier. However, seeing that the small group of paranormals was about to be drowned in the sea of zombies, Xiao Qing couldn't just stand aside and wait for Yen Hanqing and the others to come over. Therefore, Xiao Qing was the first to take action. She found a balcony on the second floor, then climbed up. After occupying the high ground, she waved her hands, and the vines rushed out quickly with her mind. The vines wrapped around the waists of the paranormals who were drowned in the sea of zombies, then dragged them back. Those paranormals were full of despair and were ready to die, but they closed their eyes and didn't feel the pain of being torn apart. Instead, they felt as if they were riding on clouds. When they opened their eyes again, they saw a woman carrying a child in front of them. The woman was expressionless. She took back the vines, then jumped off the balcony before they could react. Only then did they come to their senses. Were they saved? After saving the small group of paranormals, Xiao Qing joined her friends. Air Dai jumped into the zombie crowd without hesitation and kept killing the high-level zombies. Xiao Qing didn't rush in. She needed to protect Little Bun and Xiao Tong. Xiao Tong released a spiritual shield and followed behind Xiao Qing. The shield covered Xiao Qing and Yen Qiue, so no zombie could break through it. Then 2 people, one in front of the vines and the other one controlling the air, harvesting the zombies at a fast speed. Soon, Yen Hanqing and the others, who had received the news, arrived. They came from another direction and surrounded the zombies, then began to clean them up. Their combination was like this. Gu Chuan was in charge of freezing the zombies. He didn't want to freeze them to death. He only wanted to make them unable to move for a short period of time. Then, Gu Panpan was like a King Kong Barbie. All the ice sculptures would quickly break under her hands. Then Gu Chuan used ice in his left hand and water in his right hand. As long as the water dragon was released, Yan Hanqing's lightning would immediately follow. After all, water could conduct electricity. Therefore, groups of zombies fell instantly. The scene was even more spectacular than Xiaoqing's. The group of superpowered people standing on the balcony purely as onlookers was speechless. They were chased by zombies and had nowhere to run. In the end, they could only wait for death. However, when these zombies encountered Xiaoqing and the others, they were unable to resist. There were at least 1,000 zombies, and the weakest one was at least 800. They were surrounded by a team of superpowered people and tortured like dead dogs. No wonder they could only be the lowest-level superpowered people's team. Half an hour later, Gu Panpan and her friends began to clean up the battlefield. Cleaning up the battlefield was the most annoying job because the zombies all over the ground were smelly. She had to cut open their heads and take out their nuclei. In the end, Gu Panpan didn't even look at the lowest-level zombies. She would only take out the nuclei of those at least second-level zombies. After taking out the nuclei, Xiaoqing roughly pointed at them and left with her friends. At this time, the rescued team of superpowered people realized that they hadn't thanked Xiaoqing yet. At this moment, Xiaoqing had already taken her friends back. They had almost collected enough contribution points. On the way back, they should be able to clean up some zombies. Chapter 369. This time, if the base still found an excuse, she would leave directly. At most, she would go to the capital to be a temporary resident. Anyway, the capital wouldn't chase them away. It was just a household registration. It wouldn't be a problem. At most, every time she left the capital and returned, the procedures would be slightly more troublesome. That was all. The staff member was very shocked that Xiaoqing and the others returned so quickly. She was very clear about how many zombies those contribution points represented. Many people who tried to change their household registration would be scared away by the contribution points. As for Xiaoqing, how long had she left? She definitely didn't have enough contribution points. Then Xiaoqing clapped her hands. Gu Panpan and the others each carried a sack over. They opened the sacks and poured out a pile of nuclei. How many nuclei could 4 or 5 sacks hold? Anyway, there was a small mountain on the ground. The people who were doing other things around were also shocked. They all turned their heads and stared at Xiaoqing. Their jaws dropped. How many nuclei were there? How many zombies did they kill? Let's count. Xiaoqing found a chair and sat down. Then she lazily raised her chin. If it's not enough, I still have more. The staff member was silent for a long time. Then she called a few other idle people to count together. They counted for nearly an hour. Everyone counted until their backs were sore and their eyes were blurry. At the last number, the staff member was also stuck. Because the nuclei in front of her were not only enough for the contribution points, but also far exceeded the requirements. Something like this had never happened before. She actually didn't know what to do next. Since the contribution points are enough, then help us cancel our household registration. Xiaoqing said lightly. The staff member's hands were numb. She couldn't ask her superior. After hesitating for a long time, she took action and canceled the household registration of Xiaoqing and the others. Xiaoqing waved her hand again. Those nuclei were collected. Xiaoqing, who was free, felt that the air was much fresher. She stretched lazily and brought her friends back to pack their things. She also brought Fu Jingma along. When she stepped out of the gate of the base, Xiaoqing was still a little dazed. This was the first base she had lived in. She used to have a home here. But now, she had no choice but to give up this home and start over somewhere else. Along the way, Fu Jingma was quite silent. However, he was very nimble. He often helped Yan Hanqing with cooking and helping out. Even if Xiao Qing didn't like him, she had to admit that Fu Jingma was a decent person. At least, no one could find fault with him. After leaving the base, Xiao Qing and the others rushed to the capital at full speed. It only took them half the usual time to reach the capital. Old Master Qin had already sent someone to wait at the gate of the capital city. As soon as Xiao Qing arrived, that person ran back to report. Hence, when Xiao Qing and the others arrived at the gate of the Qin residence, Old Master Qin was already waiting there. He went up and hugged Little Bun. "My baby, let Grandpa see. Have you lost weight in the past 2 days?" Little Bun puffed up his cheeks. "I haven't lost weight. Grandpa, look. I'm fat and spicy." The old man was amused. Although he really wanted Xiao Qing and the others to continue living in the Qin residence, he knew that Xiao Qing couldn't stay there forever. Hence, Old Master Qin directly said, "I've already found a house for you. Do you want to eat first or look at the house first?" Xiao Qing immediately said, "Let's go look at the house first." Old Master Qin personally brought Xiao Qing and the others to look at the house. The house that Old Master Qin found was not far from the Qin residence. It only took 3 to 5 minutes to walk. From the outside, it looked like a courtyard house. However, there was something special inside. There was a flower bed and a 2-story bungalow. It looked very nice. Chapter 370. At the very least, it suited Xiao Qing's taste. She looked around and saw that there were some common flowers planted in the flower bed. After eating, she could take a walk around the flower bed to relax. In the middle were 3 small buildings in a triangular shape. Whether it was the decoration or the space, they were all very good. After buying some new bedding, she could move in directly. You only need a level 120 crystal core to buy it. Old Master Qin stroked his beard and said proudly, "This is my old friend's house. I haven't lived in it many times, and almost everything is new." Xiao Qing handed the crystal core to Old Master Qin without hesitation and said, "I've really troubled you this time. I'll treat you to a meal when you're free." "You don't have to. Just treat me to a meal today." The old man blinked his eyes and said bluntly. Xiao Qing laughed involuntarily and said, "Okay." Moving to a new house naturally had to be celebrated. Xiao Qing first took people out to buy new bedding and some vegetables and fruits. She decided to celebrate tonight. No matter what, moving to a new place was worth celebrating. That night, Yan Hanqing cooked a table full of dishes and brought Old Master Qin to celebrate moving. Moving was a big event, so when they celebrated, they couldn't help but drink some wine. In the end, they collapsed all over the floor. Xiao Qing didn't drink much, so she was still relatively sober. She sat by the side and chatted with Old Master Qin. Old Master Qin went straight to the point. "I sent a group of people to keep an eye on the demonic mercenary group all day. In the end, I really found something." Xiao Qing poured a cup of tea for Old Master Qin to sober up and asked, "What did you find?" Old Master Qin stood up and said as he walked, after learning of the source of the smoke, "I sent people to keep an eye on the demonic mercenary group all day and night, afraid that they would do something against human morality. Then news came from there. At the very least, they have the intention to do that thing." Old Master Qin said with an ugly expression, "I'm really worried that they'll use living people." Xiao Qing knocked on the table and said, "This matter needs to be observed for a while before we can be sure. What I'm most worried about right now is that they might already be making other chemical weapons. Let's wait and see." Old Master Qin sighed. "If we discover that the demonic berserk mercenary group is a malignant tumor, I will definitely bring my men to flatten it. I'll pay attention to it too. I have a feeling that things can't be that simple." Xiao Qing said helplessly. It wasn't that she always had bad intentions and always wondered why those people didn't make a move. It was just that some things were better prepared for a rainy day. Especially since Mad Demon had a grudge against her. She was someone who bore grudges. The vengeful Shao Qing rubbed her chin and prepared to pay attention to Mad Demon's movements at all times. After putting this matter aside, Shao Qing chatted with old Master Qin for a long time about the little bun's daily life. She also learned that Qin Zishi had gone out to do a mission again. After all, Qin Zishi was the only child of the Qin family. In the future, he would definitely take over the Qin family's current power. If he didn't have some ability, he wouldn't be able to control the situation and support the Qin family. At this point, old Master Qin was a little melancholic. In his life, he had experienced ups and downs. It could be said that he was proud of his life. In his old age, his son was quite filial, and his grandson was also obedient. There was only one thing that stuck in his heart. That was that his son and grandson were like enemies all day long, but there were some things that he couldn't say. He couldn't blame his son for remarrying after his wife died, right? Or blame his grandson for refusing to accept a stepmother. In the end, the relationship between his son and grandson became more and more strained day by day. Old Master Qin was so worried that his hair had already turned white. Usually, he wouldn't say these things to Shao Qing. However, today, after drinking a little, he let go. He patted Shao Qing's shoulder and sighed. I've never seen Shao Shi so close to anyone. Ah, Qing, if you have the chance, help me persuade him. How can a good father and son live like enemies? I'll remember. Shao Qing supported old Master Qin and sent him home. Only then did she heave a sigh of relief. She had come back to torment her family. The one who drank the most was Gu Panpan. The others didn't drink much, but unfortunately, they couldn't hold their liquor well. Thus, only Er Dai and Yan Hanqing were still standing. Even Gu Chuan sat on the sofa in a daze. His face was expressionless, but there was a red cloud on his cheeks. He looked as if nothing had happened, but in fact, he was so drunk that he couldn't tell north from south. In the end, Yan Hanqing was responsible for taking care of Gu Chuan in the room. As she was underage, Xiao Tong, who wasn't allowed to drink, took care of Gu Panpan. The little bun was thrown to Er Dai. Shao Qing carried Yan Qiwa upstairs. Chapter 371. As long as her enemy was having a hard time, she would have a good time. With this mentality, Shao Qing deliberately walked over, ready to see what was going on. One side was undoubtedly the members of the demonic mercenary group, while the other side was a man and a woman. There was even a stall on the ground, selling bits and pieces. Shao Qing didn't need to look to know that it was most likely related to protection fees. She leaned closer to listen. The woman was scolding. How black-hearted are you? I only earn a few crystal cores a day and you want half of it? Do you still want me to live? The person from the demonic mercenary group said, everyone is doing business outside. We take people's money and eliminate people's disasters. You're not the only one who pays protection fees. Why do you think it's too much? The woman sneered and said, we don't need your protection, okay? I won't pay this protection fee. The leader of the demonic mercenary group sized him up and said with a lewd smile, it doesn't matter if you don't pay. Pay with your body. Let us brothers do once, and this month's protection fee will be waived. The woman spat and covered her chest vigilantly. She pursed her lips tightly. She had several orphans to raise in her family. The money she earned from running a stall was only enough to feed the children in her family. When the harvest was good, she could even add some meat to the children in her family. However, these people clearly saw that they were easy to bully. They opened their mouths and wanted to take half of the profits. If these crystal cores were handed over, those children would starve. Therefore, no matter what, the woman was unwilling to compromise. When the man beside her saw this, he hurriedly said, isn't it just protection fees? We'll pay. He gritted his teeth and smiled apologetically. Women have long hair and short knowledge. Don't lower yourself to his level. I'll hand it over right now. He opened his pocket and counted for a long time. He counted 10 crystal cores and was about to hand them over to the demonic mercenary group when the woman's eyes turned red. She snatched the crystal cores and said aggrievedly, I can't give them to them. Don't forget, little Yang is still sick. I'm counting on today's income to buy him something good to nourish his body. 1. Give me the crystal core. The man hurriedly urged her, but she just held onto the crystal core and refused to give it to him. She didn't give it to him, but instead, it was in line with the demonic mercenary group's thoughts. He smiled and said, "Since you don't want to give me the crystal core, then you can use your body to pay for it." The man hurriedly said, "I'll give it to you right away." Then he started arguing with the woman. The person from the demonic berserk mercenary group waved his hand indifferently and said, "I'll tell you today." Regardless of whether you give it to us or not, we'll definitely play with this woman. He clapped his hands and said, "Brothers, let's go. We'll have meat in a while, and everyone will have a share." The members of Mad Demon beside him began to jeer excitedly and slowly approached the two of them. The man's expression immediately changed. He shielded the woman behind him and looked at them warily. Seeing that they were really going to do something bad to the woman, the man whispered to the woman, "If the situation turns bad, I'll stop them. You run quickly." The woman grabbed the man's sleeve and gritted her teeth. "It's broad daylight, and there's a patrol team from the capital."
How dare you?
"I'll let you see if we dare." The captain of the demonic berserk mercenary group took a step forward and pushed the man away. He was about to pull the woman into his embrace. The woman retreated in shock. The man hurriedly went forward to stop her. As he stopped her, he shouted, "Run." At this moment, the remaining members of the demonic berserk mercenary group had already surrounded him. They pressed the man to the ground and punched and kicked him. As for the captain, he grabbed the woman and pulled her into his embrace. The woman tried to resist, but he easily grabbed her hands and wantonly took advantage of her. Chapter 372. The woman's eyes were red from the humiliation. She kept struggling and looked at the people around her for help. However, the people around her did not help her. Instead, they were watching the show. Some of them were even whispering. The patrol team of the capital city passed by. When they saw that it was Mad Devil's men, they left without stopping for a second. Mad Devil's men laughed wildly. The woman's beautiful eyes were filled with tears. Xiao Qing frowned. She did not expect Mad Devil's men to be so arrogant in the capital city. She also did not expect that people's hearts were so cold. Mad Devil's men molested a woman in front of so many people, but no onlookers helped her. Listening to their words, someone even said, "I asked her to pay the protection fee, but she didn't. I think she's just a slut. She's still hoping to be raped by others." Xiao Qing's eyes dropped to the freezing point. Finally, she took a step forward and quickly waved a vine. It wrapped around the woman's waist and pulled her into her arms. Xiao Qing withdrew the vine and hugged the woman in her arms. She covered her torn collar and said faintly, "It's not good to do this to a girl on the street." Mad Devil's man spat and said, "Who's the brave one who dares to meddle in my business?" Then he looked up and saw that it was Xiao Qing. He had seen Xiao Qing and also saw Xiao Qing beat up the masters of his regiment. His angry face suddenly turned into a warm smile. "I was wondering who it was. It's Captain Xiao. What can I do for you, Captain Xiao?" The onlookers were originally gloating over Xiao Qing's misfortune, waiting to see Xiao Qing suffer, but now their jaws dropped to the ground. Xiao Qing glanced at the man who was still being beaten and said, "Ask your men to stop first." The man smiled carelessly and waved his hand. "Okay, I'll give you face." "Stop, stop." When those people stopped, the man on the ground got up with a limp. He wiped the corner of his mouth and stood beside Xiao Qing. Xiao Qing patted the back of the woman in her arms and then said faintly, "It's just a small matter. Why do you have to make such a fuss? It won't look good. Why don't we just call it quits? My face should still carry some weight." Since Captain Xiao has stepped in, then let's forget about this matter. "Captain Xiao, if you're free, why don't you come visit our regiment? Our regiment commander still misses you," that person said with a smile. Xiao Qing faintly responded, "I'll go when I'm free." That person cupped his hands and left with his men. He was a decisive person. He knew that he couldn't win against Xiao Qing, so he might as well give face to Xiao Qing. Xiao Qing wasn't going to give him face. Xiao Qing narrowed her eyes slightly. She was already considering whether to follow them later and see if she could kill them all. After Mad Demon's men left, Xiao Qing coldly glanced around and said, "Let's all go."
Don't look at what you shouldn't look at.
Otherwise, your eyeballs will run away. Those people saw that even Mad Demon's men didn't want to offend Xiao Qing, so they didn't dare to offend her. They immediately dispersed and did what they were supposed to do. Xiao Qing took off her coat and put it on the woman. Then she said faintly, "Okay, it's fine now. Let's go back." The woman clung to Xiao Qing's shoulder and wailed. Her towering breasts pressed against Xiao Qing's chest, making it difficult for her to breathe. She patted the woman's back and comforted her with great difficulty. The woman hugged her coat and thanked her softly. She was really grateful to Xiao Qing. If Xiao Qing hadn't spoken up for her, she might have been violated in public today. Chapter 373. It would be better for her to die immediately. Xiao Qing patted her shoulder and didn't say anything. Before she left, the woman insisted on giving Xiao Qing all the things in the stall. However, Xiao Qing didn't accept it. She had heard clearly that the woman had many orphans in her family. She guessed that she lived a hard life. How could she accept her things? However, the woman was very insistent and insisted on stuffing everything to Xiao Qing. Xiao Qing had no choice but to accept it. Then, she stuffed a handful of crystal cores into the woman's hands and ran away while the woman was not paying attention. She knew that the woman wouldn't accept it, so she decided to run away. After she ran away with air dye, she put the things the woman gave her and the things she bought into the telepathic eye space. Then, she entered the city to find Mad Devil's group. However, Xiao Qing found that Mad Devil's group didn't leave after they entered the city. Instead, they hid in a corner and scattered. She wanted to find a place where no one could see them and stop them. Unexpectedly, they stopped. Xiao Qing had to hide with Air Dai to see what they were going to do. Xiao Qing and Air Dai waited in the dark for a while. Soon, they saw the woman and the man coming in. As the woman walked, she thought about what to buy for her children. Before the apocalypse, she was the caretaker of an orphanage. During the apocalypse, the children in the orphanage either died or went missing. In the end, only 6 or 7 of them were left, and she brought them to the capital. She and her brother were very caring and responsible. Every day, they went out early and came back late to earn crystal nuclei to feed the children. Fortunately, the children were very obedient and well-behaved. Every time she came back home, the children had already cleaned the house and were waiting for her. They went to the market first and bought some meat and vegetables at a reduced price. These vegetables weren't fresh, so they were much cheaper. After that, they turned left and right, preparing to go home. Because their house was in a remote place, they turned into a small alley. Mad Devil's group immediately followed them. Xiao Qing suddenly realized that they hadn't given up. It was good that they were fine. She was still thinking about how to find a place where no one could see and take care of all these scumbags. The woman and the man walked in front, while the mad demon people walked behind them. Xiao Qing and the others sat and waited for them to make their move. The more they walked, the more remote they became. Finally, they walked into a deserted alley with no one in sight. Xiao Qing was waiting for this moment. When Mad Devil's group rushed forward and tried to drag the woman away quickly, Xiao Qing and Air Dai attacked. Air Dai's nails were sharp. He quickly jumped into the crowd. With a slash of his finger, he could slit a person's throat. Xiao Qing also held a military knife. Then vines drilled out of the ground and tied people up. She held a knife and went up to kill people. Not to mention the captain of Mad Devil, even the woman and the man were stunned. Then they watched their heads fall to the ground one by one. Blood gushed out from their necks and flowed to the ground in an instant, dyeing the ground red. Xiao Qing didn't even give them a chance to speak. She had already killed all of them. The captain of Mad Devil's group saw that the situation was not good. He wanted to run away, but Xiao Qing stretched out her hand and whipped his head. Xiao Qing was very fast. The man and the woman could only see the cold light flashing. In a few minutes, the ground was covered with corpses. After all, with her current strength, killing these few dregs was like cutting grass. If the grass was a little sharper, she might even be able to cut her fingers. However, this group of people couldn't even touch the corner of her clothes. Chapter 374. The woman was stunned. She probably didn't expect Mad Demon's men to tail them, nor did she expect Xiao Qing to keep an eye on this group of people. She stuttered for a long time before saying, "We're almost at my door. Do you want to come in and have a seat?" Xiao Qing wasn't prepared to go in, but seeing the woman's expectant eyes, she thought for a moment and nodded. Okay. The two followed the woman into her house. They weren't so poor that they had to live in tents. They could still afford to live in a bungalow, but it was a little cramped. As soon as the woman returned home, the group of children surrounded her and shouted. The woman touched their heads one by one and said, "These children are all orphans. They have no one to rely on. It's quite pitiful. Now we rely on each other." She asked the children to call Xiao Qing Aunt one by one. The group of children was very obedient. Xiao Qing touched the children's heads and felt very emotional. Looking at these children reminded her of when she was young. Then the woman bought some fruits and distributed them to the children. The fruits she bought were all artificially cultivated in the base. The leftover fruits either had scars or wilted. Anyway, they weren't easy to sell. The stall owner recognized her and sympathized with her, so he sold them to her at a cheap price. At this age, the children lacked vitamins and the like. Eating fruits often was good for their health. Therefore, she often bought some fruits when she went home. Even if they were cheap, the children were very happy. After the children received the fruits, they couldn't bear to eat them. They nibbled on them in small bites. After nibbling, they first licked their teeth and then licked the places where they had bitten. An apple could be eaten for a long time. The leader of the children looked slightly older than the others. He was expressionless as he stuffed the last apple to the woman. Then he whispered, "I don't like to eat this." "You eat it." The woman didn't eat it. She just wiped it and stuffed it back to him. Her eyes were red.
Eat it.
"I've already eaten." Xiao Qing's heart ached when she saw this. It wasn't easy for her and her brother to take care of this group of children. They must have suffered a lot. Xiao Qing flipped through her space and didn't find anything suitable. She only found some candy for the little buns. She took out some and distributed them to the children. The children's eyes were filled with joy and longing, but none of them reached out to take it. They were all very well behaved. Xiao Qing could only say, "Take it and eat. Don't stand on ceremony." The children all looked at the woman. The woman had just been saved by Xiao Qing more than once. She hadn't even repaid her life-saving grace. How could she have the nerve to take Xiao Qing's things? Not to mention candy, which was already considered a rare child snack. She hurriedly refused. "We can't accept it." "Benefactor, you should take it back and give it to the child." Xiao Qing said faintly, "I'm giving it to the children, not you." "Why are you refusing?" "Come, take it. It's not much, just one piece per person." The woman could only say, "All right, take it. Why aren't you thanking Auntie?" The children were all very excited. They were reluctant to eat the candy and held it carefully. Xiao Qing sat for a while. Seeing that the sky was getting dark, she said, "I still have something to do. I'll leave first. If there's a chance in the future, I'll come to see you." "Benefactor, you're not staying for dinner?" The woman bit her lower lip and said disappointedly, "My cooking skills are very good." Xiao Qing shook her head. "I still have something to do." Then, she left with air dye. When she left, the woman and the man took the children to send her off. After Xiao Qing left, the first thing she did was to dispose of the corpses. The corpses were too close to the woman's house. Today, outside the city, the woman had a conflict with Mad Demon's people. Xiao Qing was worried that Mad Demon's people would find out about her. So, she specially cleaned up the scene and destroyed the corpses. At least, she didn't want to implicate them. After leaving, Xiao Qing touched her chin and pondered. She had heard the Mad Demon's team leader say something. Originally, it was like this. Someone beside him suggested to fry the woman first and then kill her. However, he sneered and said, "She made me lose face. How can I let her die so easily? Are we lacking 2 test subjects? I'll just use her to make up the numbers." Could the test subjects here be related to the previous chemical weapons? Chapter 375. If it was really as she thought, Mad Demon would definitely be conducting live experiments behind the scenes. Perhaps that chemical weapon was just a byproduct of their experiments. Xiao Qing rubbed her chin, her gaze a little cold. She felt that there was definitely something fishy about this. However, no matter what kind of experiment it was, Mad Demon would definitely cover it up tightly and not let others find out. Without accurate evidence, the Mad Demons would never admit that they had done such a thing. What was the evidence? At the very least, she had to find the place where the Mad Demon mercenary group did this experiment and expose this place to the entire capital. After all, the Mad Demon mercenary group had a very deep foundation in the capital. Moreover, Wu Booping alone would definitely not dare to get involved in live experiments. There must be someone else behind him. This person was very likely to be a high-ranking official in the capital. At the very least, he was at the level of the Qin family. Otherwise, he would definitely not be able to withstand it. If that was the case, then it would be troublesome. Xiao Qing did not stay outside for long. She went back with her air dye. After returning, she first put down the things she bought and let Yan Hanqing arrange them first. Then she went to the Qin family alone. She found old Master Qin and chatted for a long time. When she left, both of their expressions were very heavy. Even when Xiao Qing went back to eat hot pot, she did not relax at all. This kind of heaviness remained until lunch break, when Yan Qiue massaged her shoulders. Yan Qiue also noticed that something was wrong with Xiao Qing, so she deliberately asked, "What's wrong with you today? Isn't it a happy thing to move to a new house?" Xiao Qing simply told Yan Qiue about the matter and expressed her concerns. Yan Qiue laughed at that time. Even if the sky collapses, there are still tall people to hold it up. Why are you so worried? If Mad Demon is really conducting live experiments behind the scenes, then at least the Qin family is the one who has to deal with Mad Demon, right? As long as this matter is exposed, Mad Demon will be hated by everyone. You don't have to bear it alone. Besides, even if there is some powerful person behind him, so what? No matter how powerful he is, can he be the enemy of the entire country? To put it bluntly, what do you care about? The worst-case scenario is that we have to leave this place. We have people and food, so we can find a quiet place where we won't be disturbed and live in seclusion for the rest of our lives, Yan Qiue said half-jokingly. When the time comes, air dye, and I will warm your bed. Isn't that great? Xiao Qing's originally worried mood was also disturbed by him. She immediately laughed and said, "You're right, I'm thinking too much. But can you take your hand away from my chest?" Yan Qiue moved her hand away from Xiao Qing's chest and said calmly, "I just saw a strand of hair. I've already taken it off." Then he was kicked off the bed by Xiao Qing. Air dye immediately occupied Xiao Qing's arms and acted cute. After being enlightened by Yan Qiue, Xiao Qing naturally put those troublesome things behind her and focused on strengthening her ability. Now that she was at level 5, she could find another mutated plant to subdue. Currently, the mutated plants in her hands were vines, man-eating flowers, and daughter. Among them, the man-eating flowers were not very useful unless they were used to kill low-level zombies. The daughter was only suitable for dealing with humans. As for the auxiliary plant, it was more suitable for large-scale battles. Moreover, it could not be known. Once it was known, the enemy would be on guard, and it would be useless. If she subdued another mutated plant, she would mainly consider the auxiliary plant, which could assist her teammates or her own ability. Chapter 376. However, there was no need to rush. It all depended on fate. On the third day after moving into the new house, old Master Qin sent a message saying that nothing unusual had been found. He had sent people to monitor the higher-ups of Mad Devil, but they hadn't found anything related to human experiments. However, when collecting information, the Qin family had discovered that many ordinary people had gone missing. These missing people often didn't have any relatives or friends, didn't have high status, or lived alone. Therefore, after they went missing, no one would look for them. After a while, the existence of these people had faded away. After all, it was the end of the world, and human lives were the most worthless. It was normal for a few people to go missing. Perhaps some paranormal didn't like you and killed you, and you wouldn't be able to complain. However, more and more people went missing, and some people with relatives also went missing. Only then did someone report the case. However, even if the case was reported, it would become an unsolved case because no one could find the missing people. Old Master Qin felt that this matter was very strange. Where did all the missing people go? Even if there were a few people who offended some powerful paranormal and were killed, it was impossible for all the thousands of people to offend paranormal, right? Old Master Qin's intuition told him that this matter might be related to Mad Devil. Xiao Qing also felt that it was related to Mad Devil. After all, if they wanted to do human experiments, they must have test subjects. So, where did the test subjects come from? These people who lived alone and didn't have any relatives or friends were very likely to become the prey of Mad Devil. After all, even if they went missing or died, no one would do anything for them. After reading the message that old Master Qin gave her, Xiao Qing didn't have any clue. She contacted Zhu Machun and prepared to go out with him. Zhu Machun and Wu Buping had been at odds for a long time, so maybe he knew something. As soon as Xiao Qing said that she wanted to go out, two people followed her. One was Yan Qiyu and the other was Er Dai. When they heard that Xiao Qing wanted to go out with a man, they automatically ignored the man's name and insisted on going out with her. Xiao Qing couldn't do anything about it, so when she went out, she brought 2 pieces of sticky candy with her. Zhu Machun had come by himself. They had arranged to meet at a small restaurant, so they could have a meal together. Then, when Zhu Machun arrived, he saw that Xiao Qing was standing on either side of him. There wasn't the slightest hint of a private conversation going on. Xiao Qing helplessly invited Zhu Machun to sit down and then handed him the menu. They didn't come out to eat, so Zhu Machun ordered 2 of his favorite dishes and then returned the menu. After the waiter left, Xiao Qing chatted with Zhu Machun about the things that had happened to her recently. However, she turned everything she had seen and heard into guesses. Then Xiao Qing said, "I called you out this time, mainly to ask if you know anything about mad demons." Zhu Machun thought for a moment, then said, "Because of many reasons, mad demon and I don't like each other. You should know that. The more hostile we are, the more we try to understand each other. I was like that for a period of time. I carefully studied Mad Demon, but I didn't find anything wrong with him until recently." "Who?" Xiao Qing asked curiously. "Guan Haishan. You probably don't know this name. He represented one of Mad Demon's 3 vice commanders, but he died a long time ago. However, I saw him again a while ago," Zhu Machun said with a serious expression. "I felt that something was wrong at the time, but I didn't have time to verify that person's identity, so I couldn't confirm if he was really Guan Haishan." You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.